guessing the consensus was that we the people,
Well,
to a lot of people, I think the consensus was that it was the signers and signees of the original signatories of the Constitution.
well, that is.
Bill
But-
Thornton believes it's us. Bill Thornton.
Everybody?
You know Bill Thornton? He does common law.
At common law,
He believes that we are the people, but Boris thinks that that we're not the people that are referred to
In the document.
in the document, right? The declaration or whatever.
so we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, I think it could be one of those things that again they've created an uncertainty by referring to we the people of the document and then we the people separately.
It's another one of these things that throws you off track, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, did I tell you that a guy, a friend of mine, goes by the nickname Moxie in California, and his employer let him work from home for a while, but now they called him into the office and said, one of the partners said, we need to get you vaccinated. And he said the only way you can get vaccinated or can get away from the vaccination is through a religious exemption or a medical exemption. So what they're doing is cleverly steering them towards these exemptions and not having them focus on the legal remedies that they have.
Yeah.
And I said, Moxie, what they're doing is they're getting you to focus over here when the solution's over here. You got to go for the legal remedy. The legal remedy is hostile work environment and OSHA safety. They can't make you inject shit in you if they don't have an MSDS sheet, right?
Yeah, I've created letters and put them up on groups and stuff for people that have been crying out because they're going to be fired from the jobs. And I say, look, give them this letter, keep giving them this letter, and don't quit.
Right.
Do not quit. And I've changed the letters up depending on what the criteria is, but the essence is to point out these are mandates, it's not law. It's religious exemptions still exist. The Nuremberg Code states it has to be informed consent, and you have to be fully informed of all of the, and you know, some of them that how can you accept or consent to something that has death as a possible side effect.
Yes.
And also it has a 99.98% recovery rate in general population. Why would you vaccinate against something that you're most likely just to recover from?
Yeah, so
Blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's just a list and list, and then the legal ramifications stating that I'm now giving you notice
yes.
that if you continue down this path and force this mandate upon me, you, in essence, will be in legal jeopardy and will be subject to financial penalty to me for a substantial sum of money.
Yeah, see, the one thing I would tweak with that, I mean, you're right on target, but one thing I would tweak is I'd say, on the first notice, you say, is it your intention to harm me?
Yeah, now that language is more precise.
So what you're doing is you're saying, by moving forward, you're proving your intention to harm me, and that's good to have in a court case.
Yeah.
And then the next
that was the point behind the whole letter. It's a court case, it's evidence.
Yes.
And they proceeded and continued
Yep.
despite the fact that you pointed this, and this out,
Yep.
and that everything they were doing was illegal.
All those
and
things
they
will
still
harm you.
sacked you in
Yeah.
the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the next one you say, I haven't heard back from you, which indicates that it is your intention to harm me, but I can still forgive you if you cease and desist what you're doing.
Mhm.
But if you continue, that intention will be converted into a trespass on my property, my body, right?
Mhm.
And we'll have to go into a court situation where we'll have to get it resolved, right?
Well, the other thing I've added to some of these as well, depends again on the circumstances and the situation, but because because they've kind of done a segregation thing where if you don't take the jab, then you have to wear a mask and you have to go all through testing and all this stuff. So what I've also said on these is, if it's your intention to segregate those that are unvaccinated for COVID and do medical testing, then I demand that if you wish to play doctor, then that you also segregate those with sexually transmitted diseases, TB, blah 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 blah, and other communicable diseases, etc. etc.
And then how do you protect us without the vaccination from those that are vaccinated that are shedding spike
Yeah, well,
proteins?
we know that, but they don't. As far as they're concerned, the vaccination gives them the protection. They don't know or understand or comprehend that they're spreading shit when they get that vaccine, or initial or real vaccines. This is something completely different, and we've no idea what the hell this is doing.
Well, it's experimental. They can't force you to take something that's experimental.
Or under code. That's exactly why I put it in the letters.
Yeah.
It's experimental.
Do we want to start, or do we want to wait for some other people to show up?
I don't know if they're going to show up. I just get started.
Yeah.
It's about 10:30 now, isn't it?
And
Well, Bill
yeah.
and Corey, or somebody's having a shower at the moment.
yeah, I know. Corey was talking about having a shower.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, okay. Well, I think this stuff that you're talking about is a great stuff to bring up
It is.
when you do your presentation,
Mm-hmm.
and because that's all stuff that you know.
Well,
I mean,
the whole point behind my presentation, okay, it's titled "The Right to Travel," but it goes out as how do you deal with authority and the enforcement agencies when you want to live sovereign.
Right.
And the idea is to try and give people the power and the thought processes to be able to deal with the authorities, without hopefully getting yourself in trouble.
One thing Kerry Zolman did, he put together an approach also for dealing with COVID. What he does is he goes in there and says something to the effect that, do you have proof of claim that the COVID vaccine will not cause me blood clots? Do you have proof of claim that the COVID vaccine will not damage my organs? Do you have proof of claim that the COVID vaccine will not give me myocarditis? Do you have proof of claim that the COVID vaccines won't make me sterile? Do you have blah, blah, blah? Without proof of claim, I need to be indemnified for taking or I need you to take liability for me taking the vaccine, and what I require is that you pay me up front in an escrow account $100 million to take care of my family and all the successors of my family for the rest of their lives.
I don't go that far, but I've done the same thing on one of those letters. I basically said that in the event that you force my compliance, and I accept the vaccination, then in the event of my death, I'm giving you notice that I will be holding you personally liable, and that the fee on the event of my death will be $500 million payable to my spouse or family or whatever. It's just more stuff. It's never going to happen, but it's more stuff against them.
Yeah.
And that you're giving them notice and you're laying it out, informed consent, the possible side effects, side effect of death, you're going to pay my family. But the whole point is that you never want to take that anyway. All this stuff in there is just to tell them to go, excuse the camera friends, go fuck themselves and
my
go
wife,
away.
my
Well,
wife.
wait. Let me finish this with what Kerry's doing. He says, the last part is, if you refuse to accept liability for this, you're creating a hostile work environment, and you're creating a safety issue by forcing me to take something that you cannot prove that it won't harm you. And are you willing to accept that? And do you trespass on my property.
Mhm.
And now they're screwed.
Yeah.
Right? They can't create a hostile work environment because here's what happens when you do that, you have a lawsuit in potential. They can't fire you. I mean, if they fire you, they've got to pay unemployment insurance. See, what they're trying to do is fire these people before their bonuses come out in December.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you do this, they can't get rid of their bonuses. They're still liable for that, and then they have to pay unemployment insurance due the time that this lawsuit's going on.
Yeah.
So they don't want to pay unemployment insurance for these people. They just want to get rid of them. They want to say, well, you refuse to take the shot, so you're refusing a direct order.
Yeah. Well, military stuff, they also want to get rid of the pensions as well. And the military benefits and, you know, the health benefits that they all get, veterans benefits.
Oh yeah, they get these people that are ready to go on 20 years, after they get their 20 years and they can retire from the military, and they get them at 19 years.
They're paying them until they die at 70. They got, you know, 30, 40 years of paying them and paying them and paying them.
Right.
That's what they want to get rid of. That's why they're discharging and saying you're not going to get a pension either.
Sorry.
None of our kids were ever vaccinated, and my wife handled it so well. She would just say, no problem, you give us a letter accepting all liability from any potential negative reactions, and we'll be glad to take the vaccination. And they would never ever do that. They would immediately come out with something, some reason why, some letter, some waiver, something why you don't have to take it. You know what I
So
mean?
they say unlimited liability.
It's you accept all liability for any negative reactions that might happen.
Right.
Yeah, they have the physician's warranty letter, which is to that effect. It lists all the stuff, or gives them an area that they can fill in all of the potential vaccines that we're going to give them, and all potential ingredients, possible side effects, and so on. And it says at the bottom, sign here, you accept full liability.
Yeah.
So
And they never sign it.
Oh.
Never sign it. And I found one originally for the US, and then I created one for Canada because it was different. So it should be floating around somewhere, and I think I still have a copy maybe as well.
That's
But
good of you to do that.
They know that there's negative reactions. The Children's Hospital are full of kids that have had negative reactions to vaccinations. And so they know there's all sorts of negative reactions or the potential of it.
Mhm.
And so they'll never sign anything about that. And Cliff High actually made a really good point. He said that because they have no immunity, and yet they're still pushing this jab, and thousands of people have died, then it's obvious they're trying to kill you.
Yeah.
Because they have no immunity, they could come up and say, "Oh, gee, we're sorry, we made a mistake. We're going to stop doing this, or we're going to change this vaccine," but they haven't done any of that.
No.
They just keep pushing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
What? I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
well, that's all. Is that because of the fact that they don't have liability? They know that all these people are dying, and they could say, "Oh, gee, we made a mistake," and they don't have liability. They'd look like heroes by coming out and saying that this is a mistake. We're going to change it or something like this. You see what I'm saying?
So the way around that is you say, "I, a man, called whatever, am sending this letter to a woman called thus and such, who sometimes acts as the Attorney General for the state of Connecticut or whatever." So you're not going after the title, you're going after
Going
the
after
woman.
the man or the woman, yeah.
And now they have no immunity.
Right.
And that's where they really perk up, is when you go after them personally.
I always address any letters anyway that way. Address to the name of the person who...
But you want to say the woman called this name.
Yeah, I don't say that particularly. I just give them the name, but usually...
A name is
who
a title,
acts
though.
as a whatever.
A name is a
Prosecutor
title.
for... Yeah.
I usually I give them their name, and then I say the private man acting as chief of police.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But what Boris always says, what they're trying to do in these court cases is create a title dispute. So what he says is, so what you're saying is either I'm a state-owned property interest, which would be an involuntary servitude, and don't think you're doing that, because that would be a treason to the Constitution. Or you're trying to convince me that I'm a you're trying to convince me to claim that I'm a state-owned property interest, so you can create a title dispute in some vain attempt to absolve yourself from any liability. So if they can create that title dispute, they can absolve themselves from liability, because they can use just judicial discretion to nail you in the fucking court.
Right.
But if you don't claim to be that name, there's no title dispute.
Well, there's no dispute either. There was, I don't know whether you talked about it at some point in the past, or whether it was somewhere else that I've talked about it, but there was a comment that used to be said was, you'd go to the court, and you'd say to the court, the facts of this matter are not in dispute. And at that point, there's no controversy.
Right.
Right.
So there's no reason for the court to be there, because they only sit in matters of controversy.
So then you go to Rule 12b-6, and it says, based on Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 12b-6, failure to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. If there are no claims, I move that we dismiss this case. Because there's no claim.
Yeah.
No controversy, no claim, no court case, right?
Yeah.
So you gotta
There
get
was
into
there was a full text to that, but it's going back a long way. I think.
But you're right.
Last time I heard it. Well, yeah, that was.
I've actually got a letter that was submitted to an Oregon court that they did that, and the Oregon court dismissed the case.
But now if you bring in a claim against them in the court, now you have a court case.
Well, and that's why what I do is I just file criminal complaints against the judge, against the prosecutor. You know, 2 pages, 5 pages.
Put them in the court case?
And I file them into the court case, and then I send them to the FBI and the Texas State Police.
Did you say you're gonna send us copies of those complaints so we can see?
I can.
Yeah.
I can. Remind me. You gotta remind me. I've got a good memory, but a short. I can do it right now if you want.
Yeah, why don't you do it?
I think the frustrating thing that I've found over the last 18 months is the number of people, friends, some of them, that I have tried to assist with, this letter writing process, and trying to get them to hold their employers, because some of them are actually nurses, people most recently who have been fired, who were frontline heroes 12 months previous, and they're being forced into taking the jab, even though they know it's bad for them, or potentially bad for them. And some of them have taken it. Fortunately, they didn't fall ill, they didn't die, but time is not on their side, as far as I'm concerned. And if they happen to be one of those that may have been part of the saline batch,
The pseudonym or the
pseudo shot, then
they're
great, they're lucky. But I don't think so. I think this shot's designed to fucking kill people.
I do too.
And if not immediately, and in fact I don't think it was meant to kill people immediately.
Because they didn't want to associate it with the vaccination.
Exactly, they wanted the time lapse between, event and next event.
They're dying from strokes, they're dying from myocarditis. It couldn't be the vaccine that causes that, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's reports I've seen where, people have had their arms and legs chopped off because they've had so many blood clots.
I saw that.
And
then they had them dying too.
Yeah.
I saw where there's a nurse that had her leg cut off and something else. But then she ended up dying like a couple weeks later. That's crazy.
See, another thing, what you guys should look for is in your state statutes. See, in Texas, what they do is they have the transportation code, right?
Yep.
And then they say they have a section 701 of the Texas Transportation Code that says that a county can have a county traffic officer. You can have up to 5, And in counties of more than 1 million, you can have up to 2 more, which would be a total of 7. But there's a bunch of things you have to do it, okay? And so then if you think about it, that means that no one else is authorized to enforce the transportation code except the Texas State Police and these 5 or 7 county traffic officers.
The whole
So-
county, think about Maricopa County,
I
just
know,
5 in
I know,
Maricopa County.
I know. 7 in a
Seven.
county with more than 1 million people.
It's nothing.
And so, but that's what the code says. And so then the city police, unless they jump through the hoops, and so then what I did is I sent a FOIA, or a public information request to the Tarrant County Sheriff, and I said, please send me the names and titles of all the county traffic officers for the last 3 years or something like that. See what I'm saying? And they came back and they said, we don't have any. And that makes a lot of sense, actually, because they don't want to jump through all the hoops that they have to jump through to get them qualified. There's a bunch of things they have to do. They have to be on a motorcycle. They can only stop people on the highways.
Oh.
There's a bunch of things. You see what I'm saying?
Oh,
Yeah. And so that means that there are none of the police or the county sheriffs are authorized to enforce the transportation code. They stop you for speeding, registration, anything like that in the Texas Transportation Code that's impersonating a county traffic officer. That's a felony. Okay? And it's also violating your rights under the color of law. That's another felony. And then because the chief of police, he's supposed to know, okay? And the lawyers, they're definitely required to know. So that's conspiracy now.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so you got them, and so that's, if you read these, I'm going to send you a bunch of these. These are the Word files, they're small, and that's why I'm going to send them to you.
You know, in Arizona, they have to be, in order to interact with the public, they have to be fully certified as a peace officer. And if they have a limited certification, they can only direct traffic, they can't talk to the public.
Yeah, we discussed that at one of the previous meetings, didn't we, Glenn, about
Yeah.
cops and their certification.
Right.
They have to be.
Peace officer certification.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so they should have to show it to you when you ask for it.
I asked him when I got stopped by a state policeman, I says, I want to see your certification as a peace officer, otherwise I can't talk to you. And he just goes like this. Like his uniform.
Yeah.
I said, could you please decode that for me?
Was that in Arizona?
No, this was in Texas.
Oh, well, they have it differently there, I think.
Do they?
Yeah.
That may be.
I don't know, that's possible.
Some states are different. Anyways, I'm going to send you a bunch of Word files. There's felonies, multiple felonies. Because I'm a senator in the Republic of Texas,
Protected person.
I'm a protected person under international law.
So they might have a File 19 endorsement on your name.
Well, that didn't stop them from stopping me.
I know.
So I go after the city attorney. I go after the law firm, because a lot of times it's a law firm.
I know.
And so I go after the law firm, all the partners in the law firm, because they're getting revenue because this cop is out there enforcing the transportation, and they're deemed to know the law. Mm-hmm. Anyways, so
I don't know if you want to zip that list into a zip file.
well, you can actually download it as a zip if you want. It depends on your. But I just.
I'm just wondering if they'll all go through on email, because sometimes there's a restriction on the number of attachments.
I guess we'll see. Nope. There's probably about 30 of them.
Nice. That's me. Let's see if I got it.
I don't think he sent it yet. I think it's gonna go
Oh, you're right. They weren't uploaded yet.
He may have my email address too.
glad you're helping people write these letters, because a lot of people don't know how to approach it.
No, I mean, I've had some of them in tears, some of the women, the nurses in tears.
Oh, it's terrible what they're doing to these
And
poor
some of
people.
them have been sacked anyway. And one I know, she ended up getting the first vaccine. I don't know if she's
So
got
what
the
I would
other
do
after that.
is look in your state and see if there's a, it had to be kind of like Texas, where there's a transportation code, and then whether there's a section in there that authorizes people to enforce the transportation code. And so then by definition, those people are authorized, and by definition, nobody else is.
Yeah, they do in Pennsylvania. It says that the state police can do it, but the municipal police can only arrest people of the municipality, which means their employees and officers.
So then they're not authorized to enforce it.
Right.
You want to add my email on that?
And
one
so
as well,
then, I was gonna add it.
Glenn? Yeah.
I probably got you in here. Carl,
Yeah,
PC
yeah.
know-how.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay,
Yeah, I wondered whether it was still in the memory cache.
yeah. Well, I've got emails here, and so it'll always be, as long as I save your emails, and I do,
Yeah.
it'll always. So anyways, I've got criminal complaints against prosecutors and city attorneys and law firm partners and all of that. And what I do is, when I file a bar grievance, I'll attach those to the state bar. I'll send them the criminal complaints, and then if they don't do something about it, then I file Title 18 United States Code Section 4, misprision of felony. That law firm, or not the law firm, the state bar, they're supposed to know the law, and so they're failing to report felonies.
Hey, before you send that, could you put your 3-stage letter for the Form 1020 on there that we looked at last night?
Sure.
I like what you did at the end of those.
Okay, so I'll use those Montague County ones then?
Yeah, that's fine. I think the other one would be just the same, wouldn't it? Just changing.
They're all the same,
Yeah.
Now, I know you mentioned about the English language, Glenn, but we've pronounced that Montague.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. I know. I live out in, I have some property in a town called, well, in Texas they call it Bowie. I call it Bowie.
Yeah.
I grew up in Canada, and I call it Bowie, but they call it Bowie.
Yeah.
And anyways, so.
We have a Montague, Michigan, so I would call it Montague also.
Yeah. It comes from the original English name,
What
the
does?
Montagues.
Yeah, I would have thought that one, I bet you that goes back to France. There's a lot of English names that go
Yeah.
back to France,
I was
because
thinking-
that looks French.
Yeah, yeah.
I grew up in Canada again, and so there's a lot of French.
Yeah.
Anyways. Okay, so I'm sending it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so this one is on who are we the people? And, you know, that's been actually a topic of discussion with Nelson and Chung and all of that. You know, everybody, we've been talking about that stuff for a long time.
Yeah.
Is who are we the people? So I think this is going to answer it.
Okay.
And so this is the preamble of the Constitution, and it says, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity." Okay, so that's where we the people includes our posterity. Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
Before you move to the next one, everybody just keep in mind what it says in that very first 5 or 6 letter or words.
United States.
United States. So they're all representatives of the United States.
Well,
But it is the Constitution of the United States of America, but just keep that in mind as we're going through this.
and I would suspect if you went to the original document, I'll bet you United is not capitalized.
Yeah, it's in lowercase.
I'll bet you it's in lowercase,
The bottom one or the upper one?
the upper one. We the
Right.
people of the United States.
Let's see if I can find it.
Because the United States is, because it's capitalized, it's a name.
Right,
Grammatically, it's a name.
right. In the
United
Gold
is
Reserve
a
Act,
word.
in the Gold Reserve Act, it says that in this act, and I talk about that when it talks about Federal Reserve notes, because Federal Reserve notes are only meant for internal use of the government only.
Yeah.
Anyways, in the Gold Reserve Act, it says that whenever United States is used, that it means the government of the United States. And so, that's why I think that would have been not capitalized. Because I think that generally speaking, anytime they say United States, it's government of the United States.
Now, I noticed there as well, Constitution for the United States.
Yeah,
Is there not something in there, a Constitution of the United States?
Yeah, a lot of times it'll you're right. But I use the Constitution for the United States when I'm being very, you never know if they're looking at that, but the words are everything,
Yeah.
in the law, words are everything.
So there's also the Constitution of these United States.
That's right,
Yeah. So, first of all, I'm not a liar. Well, I meant a lawyer. No, I meant a liar. You should never take my word for anything. You should always do your own research. I provided references to aid you in your research, but I don't know everything, and I'm open to ideas. There's 4 types of people you'll meet in your life. There's the people who try to wake up the slaves. There's the slave masters. There's the people who have no idea they're slaves. And there's the people who like being slaves. Which one are you? Do you really know for sure? Are you who you think you are? If you can see through the illusion, then you are the solution. If the people do not know their basic rights and freedoms, how can they know when or if their rights and freedoms are being infringed? Never forget the men of this country were marijuana growing, whiskey drinking, tax evading rebels who left their beds at night to shoot at the pigs. Now, I don't know how many of you know this, but George Washington was a hemp farmer. All
He
tyranny
used to live
needs.
not far from where we are at the moment.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Did you know that Ford, I just saw this the other day, that Ford made a car that was made entirely of hemp?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
I did. There's a video going around
Yeah.
actually.
Tires of hemp?
No, the
body-
tyres were
The
rubber,
body, the
but
frame.
the bodywork and everything was
I
all
don't
made
think
out
the
of hemp.
engine was, but.
The frame was hemp?
Yep, made it out of hemp.
Wow.
It was more solid than steel.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's why I say there's a video that went around 1933, 34. There's a guy with a huge sledgehammer and he's railing on the trunk of this, and it's just bouncing off every
Wow.
time he hits it. No
Wow.
damage at all.
Wow.
So here it is, the 1787 Constitution.
That's the original one? Well, that's not the original one.
That's a
The
PDF.
original one was script.
I know, but that's the transcript of it.
Well,
But
Somebody
yeah,
in the
have they
States
done
has
a
They
true
got it.
transcript?
It's-
That's the problem.
yeah.
Have
Yeah.
they
I'd
transcribed
want to see
each-
the original. I'd want to see the original script.
Yeah.
All right, let me find that. Maybe I have that here.
All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. This is case, back. This is an old case back, War of Independence period. It says the term citizen of the United States must be understood to mean those who were citizens of the state as such after the Union had commenced, and the several states had assumed their sovereignty. Before that period, there were no citizens of the United States. And that makes an abundant amount of sense, if you think about it.
Yeah, because they were just employees and officers, right?
Well, there was no United States, period.
That's true.
All it was states.
Yep.
I was in New York I worked at this place in White Plains, Atlas Airlines. I worked in the same building. They rented half the building that had Morgan Stanley in it. And so I worked in this building, and they had, down the street from this building was a mall, a really nice mall. It was really classy. It was in White Plains, New York. And there was this, across the street from this mall was this old courthouse and a monument in front of the courthouse. And on that monument, it said, in this building, the colony of New York became the state of New York. And so, wow, I thought,
So what does that tell you? It's the overlay, right?
well, that's where the colony of New York became the state of New York, is the bottom line.
When did it become the state of New York?
Well, when the Declaration of Independence was signed, right?
Or was it during the Reconstruction?
No, it would have been,
No,
it would have
because they
been when
go-
the Declaration of Independence was signed.
Because they all became states.
But
Yeah.
didn't they call it New York State, not the state of New York?
Well, I don't think so. I think there's always been the colony of New York. Again, it's a corporation, and the state of New York is the people. You see what I'm saying? Or no, the state of New York is a corporation. New York State is the people.
Right.
That's what I meant.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That was what I was.
But so anyways. A couple of maxims of law. The right of blood and kindred cannot be destroyed by any civil law. So remember, they talked about their posterity. And the power which is derived cannot be greater than that from which it is derived. A couple maxims of law. So I put this stuff in my affidavit of nationality. I call it an affidavit of citizenship, but I basically have nationality all over it. And because it's impossible for me to be a U.S. citizen. I wasn't born or naturalized under the 14th Amendment. You see what I'm saying? And so I was born in Canada, well, Alberta actually, and I was not naturalized, so it's impossible for me to be a U.S. citizen. And I bring that up.
So you've taken your
I claimed it.
nationality.
I claimed nationality by right of blood.
Yeah, from your mother's son.
Right. And I showed you guys that yesterday or the day before
Yep, I remember that.
with that document that I filed. Anyways, don't forget to follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to turn on notifications so that you're notified when there's a new upload. Don't forget to follow me on Getter. And don't forget to follow me on BitChute. A nation or a state, this is the Law of Nations, by Vattel, Section 1 of the State and Sovereignty. A nation or a state is, as has been said at the beginning of this work, a body politic or a society of men united together for the purpose of promoting their mutual safety and advantage by their combined strength. From the very design that induces a number of men to form a society which has its common interests, and which is to act in concert, it is necessary that there should be established a public authority to order and direct what is to be done by each in relation to the end of the association. This political authority is the sovereignty, and he or they who are invested with it are the sovereign. So, and this is the genius. Okay, let's look at it. Well, that's the Declaration of Independence, isn't it? No, that's the Constitution, okay.
But wait, I just had it set up.
We the people of the United States, it is capitalized.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, I'll let you have that one. That's the script.
that's the script.
Yeah, that's good. So, anyways, this is the Law of Nations. If you read these court cases, they all fall into conformance with the Law of Nations. This is Section 2 of the Law of Nations by Vattel. it is evident that they, by the very act of civil or political association, each citizen subjects himself to the authority of the entire body in everything that relates to the common welfare. The authority of all over each member therefore essentially belongs to the body politic or state, but the exercise of that authority may be placed in different hands according as the society may have ordained. So, if you think about it, and they're going to go into it further within the Law of Nations, because there's more Law of Nations stuff here. But that's the genius of the Constitution, because it was created by state nationals, right?
Yeah.
And so you're always anybody, and that's what I do with my I show my ancestry going back to before the War of Independence. My ancestors were here before the War of Independence. They were in Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia. They were in all of those states. And so, and I like to bring out Maryland because then that means it's the North, not just the South, you know?
Yeah.
And so, and I show, and then I attach a pedigree chart, which isn't my complete ancestry, obviously, but I'm basically saying that I've got one line here that I've talked about, and if you don't like that line, I got a bunch more you can pick from. You know what I mean? Anyways, but that is very powerful. There's maxims of law that basically neuter them. You know, they can't do anything. They can't proceed. Because their authority comes from me. And that's a problem for them.
So that line that says the authority of all over each member therefore essentially belongs to the body politic or the state.
Yeah, those are citizens.
I know. That's the key thing there. It goes
Right.
back to citizens. So if you're not a citizen, they don't have the authority over you.
Well, a citizen is actually, that's true. But you can be a national without being a citizen.
Now remember what Corey didn't hear this one. You ought to listen to this one, Corey, because there was a guy that got pulled over. He didn't have a license plate on his car. We talked about this the other day. And the cop says, we're going to have to tow your car. And he says, under what authority are you going to tow my car? He said what authority he had. He says, well, I revoke your authority because if you tow my car, that will harm me and that will be a trespass on my property. And the cop got back off his heels and he said, well, I'm not going to argue with you. We'll tow it to your house. Think
So,
about that one.
that's
See,
okay.
that-
That's okay.
I know,
I'll
it's
take
perfect.
that.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Anyways,
But you gotta know who you are and how to do that when they do that. Otherwise, he's gonna tow it to the
well,
impound line.
and thinking on your feet like that is you know, it doesn't work out so well sometimes.
Just
But
a talent.
this is section 3, Law of Nations by Vattel. If the body of a nation keep its own laws, the empire or the right to command, it is a popular government, if a democracy. If it entrust it to a certain number of citizens, to a senate, it establishes an aristocratic republic. Finally, if it confide the government to a single person, the state becomes a monarch. These 3 kinds of government may be variously combined and modified. We shall not here enter into the particulars. This subject belongs to the public universal law. For the object of the present work, it is sufficient to establish the general principles necessary for the decision of those disputes that may arise between nations. So that's section 3. So we obviously have a republic, but we have an interesting republic because it's a federal republic. And so the states, member of the Constitution, especially the Declaration of Independence, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. The Founding Fathers were really brilliant when they put that Constitution together. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, the District of Columbia is the seat of government, 10 miles maximum.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And then the amendments, they threw in the amendments afterwards that basically expanded on rights that we already had anyways, but they wanted to make sure that there's no confusion about it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, they were really brilliant about it. And and the thing I like the best is in the states is where you have common law. There's no federal common law, and so all these states are under martial law. So, but you can still get access to common law.
Right.
And on top of that, it's all comes down to, under their rules of court, it all comes down to hearsay evidence, right? So if you admit the evidence, then it's admissible. Otherwise, it's not admissible. So you don't tell them. I mean, if you can't claim your ancestry back to prior to the War of Independence, you just don't tell them that. And what's so insidious about this military dictatorship is their presumptions that they take upon themselves. You know what I mean? That's what I don't like about it. And what I tell people, like I actually put together an affidavit. It's a statement of original status. And it shows my ancestors, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, or great-grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, my great-great-great-grandfather. And I go through and this one was born on this day, and he was sired by this one, and that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
So you know about Canon 3228, right?
No, I don't.
That's the 12 presumptions of law.
No.
12 presumptions of the court.
Well, the 12
I think
presumptions.
it's called law.
Yeah, they changed it to 12
Actually,
presumptions of the court.
He's got the 12
Well, it makes
presumptions.
sense that it would be of the court, right? Put in your Google and pull up 12 presumptions of law. I think you'll see it.
Yeah, I may have sent that.
I think I got that from Carl. I think I made a video about it, actually.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well
It's
that,
the
I've
seven-
got
it's
a
the 7
guy,
elements of
And there's 7 elements of jurisdiction.
jurisdiction as well, yeah.
Anyways.
right? So anyway, there's a guy that did a rebuttal. You're supposed to rebut those presumptions when you go into court, so you enter that into the court. And that takes all the presumptions away of executor decent tort, of that it's a private thing versus a public thing. You want it to be a public meeting, not a private one. They're going in there as a private court. And you go down those 12 things and he rebuts every single one of them. And then you put that into the court case, and now you've rebutted 12 presumptions of law that they're operating under, and they can't operate under them anymore.
Yeah, you know, I think you gave me the 7 elements of jurisdiction. I don't think I've got those presumptions. That might be something worth getting.
I have it.
Do you?
I'm pretty sure I sent it to you.
You might have. I'll have to look. Anyways, that's pretty interesting. So, this talks about the different forms of government. So our government is a federal government. So then the federal government's delegated certain authority. States retain all of the rest of the authority. And the people of the states are the ones who are the sovereigns.
Isn't it the other way around? Didn't the states delegate power to the federal government?
Yeah, that's just what I said, isn't it?
No, I thought you said never mind, doesn't matter.
Yeah, it was a continued delegation from the people to the state,
Yeah.
the state to the
Okay, never mind.
Right. And so, but it's the state citizens that are the ones that are the sovereigns, right? And so that's why, you know, people say, oh, I'm a U.S. citizen. Well, that's the worst thing to say.
Shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyways.
But say you were in a different country and you went to like a consulate,
Right.
that's what you would say, right?
Well, it's actually, if you go to those consulates, it talks about American nationals.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I go to the Canadian Embassy and it says American National Services. Or American Citizen Services.
Well,
It says American, though.
New Smyrna Beach, Florida.
So you're a Floridian. That's what you tell them when you go in there. I'm a Floridian.
Okay.
Right.
For me, it's a Michiganian.
Right.
For you, it's a Texan? No, you're a Canada, right? You're born
But I am a Texian,
Texian.
right? It's a Texian. It's different than a Texan.
I know.
And would you not also claim Oklahoma?
Well, and that's what I did in my birth thing, and so I might start claiming. But I'm in Texas, and I'm a senator, and I've been living there a long time, and so I just say I'm a Texian. But you're right. I could claim an Oklahomian, And that's what I put on that document in Oklahomian. So, anyways, the words people of the United States and citizens are synonymous terms and mean the same thing. They both describe the political body who, according to our Republican institutions, form the sovereignty or hold the power and conduct the government through their representatives. They are what we familiarly call the sovereign people, and every citizen is one of this people and a constituent member of the sovereignty. That's Dred Scott versus Sanford. That's 1857, just before the Civil War.
We call sovereign people, yeah. So, you're saying the people of the United States and the citizens are synonymous
Right.
terms.
Right.
So,
But that was before the Civil War. That's before they turned it all upside down with the 14th Amendment.
oh, okay. So citizens were not a four-letter word before the.
Yeah, but you still wouldn't call yourself a citizen of the United States. You'd call yourself
People.
an American.
Oh, okay. Well, that's confusing as hell.
To some extent. But it doesn't use it as citizens of the United States.
See, I wouldn't think the people of the United States and
No, no.
citizens are synonymous terms.
Yeah, right. The phrase people of the United States is synonymous with the word citizen. Doesn't say United States citizen.
America.
American. Yeah.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Anyways, the sovereign people, through their representatives, have created the board, the court, and the board, as well as the municipal council, and defined the rights and duties of each. That's a Canadian court case. This is not unique to America. This is a principle of international law. Remember, it comes from the law of nations.
Yeah.
There's another Canadian case. The Parliament of Canada and the legislatures of the several provinces are sovereign within their spheres defined by the British North America Act, but none of them has the unlimited capacity of the individual. This is an Australian court case. Translated into constitutional terms, it denotes that the sovereign power which resides in the people is exercised on their behalf by their representatives. And it's interesting to note how Australia is such a tyranny these days.
Did you see what's her name? That hot black chick.
Candace Owens?
Yeah, did you see her the other day when she's like, why aren't we invading Australia? Why aren't we deploying troops? Because they're under attack right now. They're under tyranny.
No shit.
And their
they are.
constitution's being broken. Why don't we go in there,
Yeah,
deploy our troops, and spread freedom?
that would be an appropriate thing, I tell you, instead of, yeah, no shit. That's basically the same justification. We've been doing it for the last 50 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and every other small little country.
The powers of government in this country are derived from the people who are the ultimate sovereign. Another Australian court case. England. Every individual is sovereign over himself. 1999, House of Lords.
1999, that's pretty recent.
Yeah.
So if we're all sovereign from all the countries that you've said, then why do we have to follow all of these laws that have been put in place? For instance, why do I have to go through a background check to get a firearm?
Well,
Because you accept it.
the key is that first of all, you have to understand they make these codes and rules for the corporations, right? And the guy that you're buying the firearm is requiring the background check before he'll part with the firearm.
Yeah.
But if you find someone that, like, you can make your own, there's books I've gotten on how you can buy stuff,
Goes
buy the parts, and
Yeah.
and do a little bit of milling, and you'll have yourself a 45.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so you can make your own. And the question is the firearm, and you have to convince that guy that's selling it into the fact that it's not a firearm, it's an arm. And I have the right to keep and bear arms. And I know people that have gotten cases disappeared when they're charged with firearms charges. They immediately come back and say, submit an affidavit, that's not a firearm, it's an arm. It's not a gun, it's an arm. You see what I'm saying?
I do. I'm having a hard time grasping. For instance, if I didn't have my permit and I got pulled over by by the law, I'm supposed to let the police officer know that I'm armed. And if I didn't have a permit to carry in that particular state,
Right.
they're gonna throw my head against the ground
Right.
and put me in jail.
There was a guy actually I was helping here in New Jersey, and New Jersey has one of the worst
Strict,
firearms laws.
Yeah.
And he had one, and he was charged, and it all disappeared.
Really?
And I helped him with it, and the argument is that, but he was very, how would you put it? He wasn't near as belligerent as I would have been. but he got it dismissed.
On what argument?
It's an arm. It's not a firearm. You see what I'm saying? And I have the right to keep and bear arms. And he stuck to his
Guns?
guns and kept making that. And finally the judge, all of a sudden everything changed. It was kind of like, he just kept putting stuff in there.
Because now it's a
So
constitutional
how long did that
violation.
process take? If you don't need an exact time, but if you were to say from the time he was arrested until all the time, I mean, they probably in New Jersey they probably give him a $200,000 bond to get out.
Yeah, I don't know how that all worked out.
So I guess my thought is I agree with 100% of what you're saying, but how do we convince the majority of people
Yeah,
to follow these,
they're-
to announce I'm a sovereign citizen?
It's like Cliff High says, they're normies, and they've got their head up their ass, and they like it there.
Yeah.
There's some of them that will absolutely die before they'll ever change their way of thinking.
Yeah.
And some of them are going to change their way of thinking. The majority are waking up right now to what's going on, and many of them will, but some of them are not going to survive. And that's just what it comes down to,
Yeah.
And that's all you can do. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
It's still a free country. If you want to be a slave, you can be a slave. It's the Matrix again, right? There's those that like being slaves.
I was just thinking in terms of, in order for this corporation to be defunct or go down, it would take a majority of the people to think like-minded, like
Right.
this,
Right.
in order for it to happen. If not, you could have the greatest attorneys and 1/3 of the population, and you're still fucked because 2/3 of the population.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how tough
see,
a guy
that's-
you are, if there's 2 people jumping on you, you're dead.
I agree. And really what really happened is it used to be that when, like in the 20s and that time frame, when people came here and they were given an opportunity to swear an oath of allegiance, they were given an opportunity to swear an oath of allegiance to the United States or to the state. Become a U.S. citizen or a state citizen. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But what happened is there was that Downs versus Bidwell case that really started it all, and then in 1932 the government went bankrupt. Okay, I don't know if you know that or not, but we talk about that, and it was seized by its creditors, and the Roman cult now owns it and operates it, and they're thieves.
I
They're
heard about all
liars.
the gold in the Vatican,
Well,
underneath the Vatican.
yeah,
or
I
whatever.
heard that we seized that, but that's just a rumor.
Yeah, because where is it? That's the thing, I hear so much stuff.
Yeah,
Like, what you're saying is truth, there's legitimacy, I can, like you said, look it up for myself.
right.
But there's so much, I hear so much shit, it's almost like whoever has the next biggest conspiracy is
Right.
just popular.
Right.
Like, you can listen to Alex Jones for a month, he's gonna be wrong 27 times, but 3 days he's gonna be right,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, well, and Alex Jones does a lot of clickbait. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I go on Library or Odyssey now, and I like Alex Jones, but he'll go and sit there and make a statement in the title, and if you watch the video, you might have to watch 3/4 of the video before they ever come out and
on
say.
Rumble you're talking?
Sorry?
On Rumble?
Well, a Rumble or Odyssey or any of his sites that he
They're
does.
kicked off everywhere.
He puts clickbait out there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's
And-
just trying to hook you and get you into
Buy
his
supplements.
advertising.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, so I don't even watch his videos anymore. I like what he does, but I don't watch him because, you know, and what gets me, what really jerks my chain, is he'll be interviewing somebody and he's interrupting them all the time. He doesn't let them say what they want to say. I mean, damn, let the guy, shut up and let the guys talk, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that jerks my chain too.
Yeah.
And so,
I just, before we trail off a little bit, I just wanted to give my impression about how you make that distinction. And Glenn touched on it. You have to deal directly man to man, private sale.
Yeah.
That's how you get out of that jurisdiction side of things. If you're dealing
The government
with
title.
a gun dealer,
FFL deal,
they are registered.
yeah.
They have a business license. That makes them an agent of the government, so they have to follow all of the rules and regulations of the government.
exactly.
Alright, so I get it. So it's like, when I go to West Virginia, I can buy a gun from a private person at a gun shop.
Of course.
With no paperwork.
That's
But if
right.
I buy it from a business.
From a
that's
dealer,
there,
that's right.
Then I
But-
have to fill out all the paperwork.
It's also interesting, at least in Arizona and Texas, that you can go up and go to a gun show, and you go to a gun dealer, and you say, is this a private sale or not? Okay, a private sale being is that it's not regulated. It's not regulated by the
The license that he has.
BATF,
Yeah.
right? And it's amazing how many even gun dealers have guns or sell them that are private sales. Okay.
Yeah.
And you can go to pawn shops and do the same thing. And you can buy guns, but even then, in Texas and Arizona, you have to show, in Texas, you have to show Texas ID. That's all they want to see. They don't write anything down. They just want to see that you live in Texas. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I
And
understand.
in Arizona, the same thing.
Yeah.
That's really the only limitations is they want to see that you live in Arizona. I've got Arizona ID, and so I had trouble buying anything in Texas at the gun shows. I had friends that I know that had arms, and so I actually bought a 45, a 6 hour 9 mil. It's a 6 hour 9 mil that I bought from this friend of mine. It was a brand new one too. But I don't know, he needed the money. I guess he bought it and then he needed the money, and I bought it for a lot less than he paid for it too.
Oh,
That's what my everyday carry, that's what I have upstairs is a safe now.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the gun.
is that the little James Bond version?
I have the X, so the handle's a little bigger, because
Oh.
I got like real wide hands.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyways, the price tag on the thing was $1,200 and I paid $700 for it.
Nice.
Yeah, no joke, eh? I told him, he offered it to me for $1,200. I says, I don't have that kind of money, and I left. And he calls me up like half hour later. He says, look, if you give me $700, I'll take it. And I said, well, I could come up with $700. No problem there. I'll do that. And so, I don't know.
Did
He's
you leave your name with him? Is that how he got back to you?
well, he's a friend. He knew me. He knew me.
you.
Yeah, I've been helping him with the law and stuff like that for years, eh? He's actually a chiropractor, and he's been fighting divorce courts, and actually he's big time into commerce, quite frankly. I think that's maybe how he got the gun, is he discharged the debt somehow. And so it didn't cost anything out of his pocket. And, but I don't know, I don't ask him. It's like don't ask, don't tell. I mean, it's however he got it, and he wanted to sell it, so I bought it. I don't ask questions.
Yeah.
How'd you get it? And all that stuff. I don't really care. Anyways, and I have a friend of mine that's got like hundreds of guns, and I could get a gun from him anytime I wanted if I wanted it. But I'm more interested in him training me a little bit on how I'd like to learn a little bit about doing sniping. You know what I mean? And I want to get my marksmanship down. I mean, and that's one of the things that this friend of mine told me to do is get dummy rounds, okay? And you put them in the gun, and you just dry fire it all the time, except it's got a round in there, so you're not going to ruin the firing pin, right? And so you just hundreds of times every day, you just pull it out and draw and shoot. And what happens is, see, because of the explosion and the jump of the gun and all that, you start anticipating it, and so then you jerk it.
Yeah.
And so, but if you get used to just dry firing it, then
Muscle memory.
you get used to it not jumping and without the explosion, and so then you get your accuracy down better. And I was actually looking at buying a plinker. I wanted to buy a 22, and I wanted to do some plinking, but then I figured, well, that's even better, because now I'm not even buying the 22. I'm not even wasting all that 22 ammo. I'm just dry firing it, and yeah, I got some dummy rounds. I bought some dummy rounds on eBay.
Yeah.
And I just put them in the gun, and I go and shoot it all the time, practice. And he said he used to do that hundreds of times every day, and he'd be he went and he doesn't even he went and he was at this gun range, and there was some sharpshooting team there, and he didn't even want to shoot. And they wanted him to shoot and see how he did, and he beat them, And they were all mad because he beat them, and he didn't even want to shoot. And they twisted his arm to shoot, and he beat them.
That's great.
Yeah, it's all, in terms of self-protection, it's all about, it's not even the gun, it's the shooter and the caliber, and the ammunition.
Right.
The caliber that's been used in more murders than anything is a 22.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and you would think like, go ahead, you can shoot me with 22 5 times. But what happens is it can penetrate the skull, and then it can't, there's no exit, so it just bounces around.
Yeah,
And
right.
Whereas a 9mm, you might get shot here and it exits
Right.
here or even here,
Right.
especially a hollow point.
Right. Yeah,
I don't
so,
want to get shot by either one.
yeah, no joke, eh? Yeah, the real solution is not to be on the business end of one of those, period. Anyways, the people are sovereign and not bound by general words and statutes restrictive of prerogative, right, title, or interest unless expressly named. Acts of limitation do not bind the king nor the people. The people have been ceded all the rights of the king, the former sovereign.
That line that's underlined, that goes back to what I just said about when the cop says he has authority to tow your car, you revoke their authority. That's an act of limitation.
There you go.
I revoke your authority. Please deliver the car to 123 Main Street. And the cop backed up and says, I'm not going to argue with him. We'll take it to your house.
At the revolution, the sovereignty devolved onto the people, and they are truly the sovereigns of the country, but they are sovereigns without subjects, and have none to govern but themselves. The citizens of America, you notice they didn't say United States.
Yep.
The citizens of America are equal as fellow citizens and joint tenants in the sovereignty. And,
Chisholm versus Georgia.
yeah, that's like 1794.
Is it?
There's some really good ones in that case. And sometimes there's a summary. Sometimes in a case there's a summary, and people call me up and they're email me and say, I can't find that site. And I said, it's a summary of about 5 pages in that case. And, so I kind of get into it with people, but that's actually in that case. And that text. And most of these, the text is actually in the case, although some of them it's a summary. The people of a state entitled to all the rights which formerly belonged to the king by his prerogative. It will be admitted on all hands that with the exception of the powers granted to the states and the federal government through the constitutions, the people of the several states are unconditionally sovereign within their respective states. And that's Supreme Court. Wonder why it's going off the bottom like that.
Lost my business.
Oh, that's why.
I'll look upstairs. We launched our alpha token yesterday, only 10,000 of them. thought, Monday we would start selling, we were sold out yesterday.
Wow.
So now we just had to mint, John's right, we should mint $1 million and then start burning, we could give the same value.
Okay, that's why. That's the Supreme Court case, 16 Howard, 416. That's definitely U.S. Supreme Court and Lawyers Edition.
Wait a second, versus Smith, 1829,
Yeah, that's a New York case.
for Wendell, 920.
I know you said in the beginning, are you an attorney or you're not an attorney?
No, I'm not.
You're not an attorney?
No,
He's not a liar.
I'm not a liar.
Because my guys would love to hear this shit.
Well,
They're
they'll be
all
up on
right.
YouTube. I've got all sorts of other YouTube videos
Yeah,
up.
I'll have to look it up. I mean, I want to learn as much as possible. Most of my guys are just ready for the Civil War to break out. They're all
Is that right?
toting, drooling fuckers, yeah, but the town that I live in, I'm pretty blessed because everyone from the police department, they're very big constitutionalists.
Well,
That's what happens when you live in a farm town in the middle of nowhere.
Country, yeah, for sure. I know, I love the country. I grew up in the country. I grew up in a little town in Canada called Raymond. It was like 2,000 people.
Yeah.
The nearest town was Lethbridge, or nearest city was Lethbridge, which is like 50,000. And then the nearest big city was Calgary, which was 150 miles away. And that's like, 1 million now.
Yeah.
But so I love the country. I was in LA. I was in LA when I first came down here. I was in LA, and I was there for about 3 months in a place called Tustin, California, which is in Orange County, right? And I started feeling trapped after a while. It was 100 miles in any direction. You can't, and you're still in city. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just started feeling trapped after a while, and I had to get out of there.
Yeah. I love the country.
Oh, I love the country, absolutely.
I used to live in San Bernardino, well, Apple Valley, California, but it's part of San Bernardino Valley.
Right,
and
right.
I hate it. It's just desert. Growing up in New England, you're used to the Four Seasons.
Right,
This and that.
right.
Horrible. I liked.
The desert's not bad. It's still country at least. You can see the hills.
Yeah,
You know what
I mean, we had free. I was 12 years old shooting guns out there in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly.
No one cared.
Yeah,
There wasn't even a police department.
yeah. Yeah, in my town, we had a town cop when I was really young. I remember there being a town cop there. But what happened is they got the RCMP in there, and once in a while the RCMP would show up and drive up and down Main Street and then disappear, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there was no RCMP. In Canada it's Royal Canadian Mounted Police,
Yep.
which is, and but most of the time there was, there was a little town, nothing ever went on there anyways,
Yeah.
I remember in high school I used to go to the pool hall all the time, and that was, probably where the worst things happened, I guess you might say,
Yeah.
But anyways,
And when I was in middle school, we could go down to the hardware store downtown. We could buy pipe caps,
Oh
black
yeah.
powder,
yeah,
dynamite,
right,
fuse,
right.
and all you need is a little drill to drill a hole in the
Yeah,
cap and
you
paint
do
the
that.
pipe on.
You do that today. They're calling them.
I know it.
I ordered Niamite online, and it got flagged by the ATF.
Wow.
Yeah.
I used to have a single shot 12 gauge shotgun. I
Yeah.
paid $50 for it. It was a Remington. I still remember that thing. I probably should have kept it.
Yeah,
But
it's probably
anyways,
$1 now.
it probably would be, but I used to have that thing, and I used to, I just go walking around in the country, and if I saw something interesting, or maybe I'd go out in hunting season, especially hunting season, and so I'd go, and I'd just go on foot,
Yeah.
and to a lake or something like that, but the ducks are smart enough; they're up in the middle of the lake. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyways, so this is an English court case taken from this Jacob A. New Law Dictionary, 1750. This is nothing new. This is stuff that's old as time itself. Citizens of London are either freemen or such as reside and keep a family in the city, and some are citizens and freemen, and some are not, who have not so great privileges as others. The citizens of London may prescribe against the statute because their liberties are reinforced by statute. So in other words, they can say, well, I'm not gonna, that has nothing to do with me. You know what I mean? Governments are but trustees acting under derived authority and have no power to delegate what is not delegated to them. But the people, as the original fountain, might take away what they have delegated and entrust to whom they please. The sovereignty in every state resides in the people of the state, and they may alter and change their form of government at their own pleasure. U.S. Supreme Court. Sovereignty itself is, of course, not subject to law, for it is the author and source of law. But in our system, while sovereign powers are delegated to the agencies of government, sovereignty itself remains with the people, by whom and for whom all government exists and acts. That's a really powerful court case.
Whoa, yes.
I guess one of the questions that people could ask as well is that although the sovereignty comes from the people, does it, can you revoke,
Can you go back to the previous slide?
can you revoke your permissions or your consent individually to that government, or must it be revoked by the people as a whole?
You, well, again, remember what the Law of Nations says.
Yeah.
Okay? It goes back to the Law of Nations is what I would go by. But the question is if I delegated certain power to the government, right? Think of it this way. Think of it this way. If I delegated power to the government, does that mean that they have a right to come back to me and demand taxes? No, it does not. Okay? I cannot delegate to them the power to take my property. That's impossible. And so if they come to me looking for taxes, then there's got to be some contract or some privilege. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And once you understand how all that works, you just stay on the privileges, which you're actually pretty good at, and many of us are.
Yeah.
But the key is to understand that when we delegate authority, which is what we do, because that's what this case here, governments are trustees under power, have no power to delegate what hasn't been delegated to them. So if we delegated the power, then they cannot come to me because I didn't delegate that power. If I was going to give them property, I'd just give it to them. They can't come to me and take my property. That's illegal and unconstitutional.
Without just compensation.
That's right. Well, even without just compensation, even then, I still didn't delegate to them. The eminent domain is in the matrix again. All of that's in the matrix. If you, again, it comes down to eminent domain is when that property, and I've seen it happen, where if you buy the property with Federal Reserve notes, which is a privilege because you're not really paying for it with Federal Reserve notes, or they can presume that you paid for it with Federal Reserve notes,
Right.
then they can exert eminent domain over it
Okay.
because you really don't own it.
It happened to my aunt.
There you go.
They took 2/3 of her whole entire yard to build a stupid housing complex behind it.
Yeah.
Ripped down all those gorgeous woods and everything. She had no choice.
Well, and so, but actually she could have, if she understood what was going on, she could have prevented it.
Yeah.
But once they start, you're kind of screwed because they take their presumptions and you're already in the contract, and the courts are not going to go and say, well, if she understood the law, if she was to challenge it and bring up the issues, like in other words, if she brought forward all the rights and privileges of the original land patent or something like that, see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Then she could have done that preemptively, and it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
But
I don't think she was educated to do that. But that's why I said, I'm not sure who I was with, but I said about Trump last night. She's going to build this wall. It's never going to happen. Look what happened with the Bundy Ranch. On that, and that's 112 acres. What's going to happen when the government tries to take property from all those? You have every militia group.
well, that was, if you understand what was going on at the Bundy Ranch, that was BLM property that they were leasing.
I thought it was because they did the controlled burn.
It was on
And
BLM
it-
property.
But it was on BLM
It was
property.
BLM, but they had permission to do the controlled burn, and it got out of hand because of the winds.
Oh,
But they did everything they could to, you know what I mean, to stop it.
right.
And then they tried to take their private grazing land back, saying it was part of BLM land, and it wasn't.
Yeah, well, they can't do that, that's for
It
sure.
was, they
But-
were able to take back the land they were leasing, but they tried to take the rest of it as well.
Right, right. Again, it comes down to if you bring forward all the rights and privileges of the original land patent, and we talked about that, did we talk about that yesterday? If you do that, then that makes it really, really tough for them, because the land patent's unassailable. Nobody can challenge the land patent.
Yeah, I talk to Sherry Bundy every week.
Uh-huh,
She's a good friend of mine.
Okay.
And to this day, they're still going through.
well, if she was to bring forward all the rights and privileges of the land patent, I'll bet you that would neuter all of that.
I know she has a constitutional attorney that she's working with, but
Well,
what she says, it's a process to prove. So
Well,
I don't know all the details. so I don't
attorneys
wanna
work
say
for the court.
Yeah,
And so they're only gonna make certain arguments, they're not gonna bring up a lot of arguments because they get disbarred if they did,
yeah,
okay? I've had attorneys tell me that on numerous occasions. And they wouldn't tell me that in particular, but they would say you did what you could do.
I
And
wonder if that's why my attorney gave up his license. I have a
Really?
crypto attorney,
Uh-huh.
and he gave up his license, and he said it's because I work for my clients, I
Yeah.
don't work for the court.
exactly,
You can't
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, they'll get
So
disbarred.
I wonder if
There's
that's
a-
why he gave it up.
There's an attorney, there's Randy Kelton, I don't know if you ever heard of Randy Kelton. He's a guy I know in Texas that has a website called Rule of Law Radio. He's the one that actually told me about a bunch of stuff with Texas codes. He's really sharp on Texas codes. Anyways, what he does, and he's actually the one, Carrie suggested I do the bar grievances, but Randy did too, and so then I started really doing them with a vengeance. Anyways, what he said he does is, if someone gets charged with something, he bar grieves the attorney. They get a public pretender, right? And they'll bar grieve the attorney, and the attorney will be in there begging to get off the case. He said this one attorney, he says, was begging to get off the case. He says, I cannot work with a sword of Damocles hanging over my head like this.
I don't
and-
want to ask stupid questions, but what is a bar? The word you just said.
Bar?
No, I know what the bar is, but you said a bar grievance or something.
Yeah.
What is a bar grievance?
That's filing a complaint with the state bar against the attorney.
Just okay. I
Yeah.
get it.
Well, Randy, what he'll do sometimes is he'll bar grieve him for parting their hair on the left.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's something really chicken shit.
Yeah.
And then he'll tell him, look, you're going to get me off, or there's going to be a real bar grievance.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, this attorney was in there begging to get off the case, saying that I cannot work with a sword of Damocles hanging over my head. And so then what the guy did is he says, he's my counsel of choice. We're under private contract. And the judge will never interfere with the private contract. And he says, I want him on as my attorney. And so now the judge says, well, I can't interfere with the private contract. And so now he's stuck with you. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then you tell him, you get me off. And what happened is about 6 hours later, he gets a phone call. The attorney's all excited. The case got dismissed, and it's the first case he ever won.
Really?
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah.
How often do you speak, and where do you speak?
Well, I come here every 6 months. That's about it, really. Except in Texas, locally, I'm in the Republic of Texas. Okay, I'm a senator in the Republic of Texas, and so we have meetings there locally, and we do all sorts of things. And so, you know, I'm quite regular, but it's small groups,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah,
The rest of the stuff's on the internet, really.
and we put it up online for
Okay.
sure.
So all this stuff I can find online.
It'll be on my on my YouTube channel. This one, you know, I'll have to listen to it and make sure that it's got anything in there about, you know, anything that might get me get the video taken down.
Oh, I meant the slides, the PowerPoint.
I make those available. What I do is on my website, okay, I've got links to all of my YouTube videos, and I've also got a page. What about that?
Your order form?
Yeah, there's my order form. You can order, you can get a copy of everything. I'll send you
Okay.
a copy of all my videos,
Perfect.
and so then you'll have a copy on thumb drives.
Okay.
And but I also have I got a page with links to my YouTube videos organized by topic, and I've also got a page with links to a bunch of documents. I used to have a bunch of documents up on Yahoo groups, but Yahoo took down all our groups.
Yeah.
And so now I just uploaded a bunch of documents on my website. But I'm limited. I've got about 1 gigabyte worth of stuff on my website, but I'm limited as to how much I can put up there. So, but the PDF files, all of my video presentations, the first thing I do, I'll show you right here, is I make a PDF of the, see right here, the one we did yesterday. DIY Form
Yeah.
2020 is a PDF file of it, and so I make a PDF of it, and so the PDF is usually, the file is smaller, and that one is
4.7 meg.
the PDF is actually bigger than the PowerPoint, but usually they're smaller, and so they're easier to email,
Yeah.
and then plus people can't change them, and so I send out, if anybody wants a PDF, I'll send it to them. And they can have that. It gives them the court citations and all the stuff, you know.
Because I would like to talk to my guys about this, because there's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. And,
Right.
Um,
Yeah, you have to be careful. They're laying in wait. When you start bringing this stuff up, they're looking to sandbag you. And I help people in Texas in the courts all the time. And, you know, you basically, you know, they lose interest. If you bring up the right issues, they'll drop it.
okay.
And I'll file criminal complaints. I just sent these guys here copies of Word files for criminal complaints that I do in Texas. Now, you have to look in your local state statutes to find out if there's requirements for a criminal complaint. I know in Texas, I used to file criminal complaints all the time and nothing happened from them. But then I found out that there was statutory requirements for a criminal complaint, so that gives them an excuse just to throw it in the garbage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now I do it according to their statute. So hopefully, you know, I'm pretty sure they're getting.
I'm just gonna have to go online and like start, because I missed some yesterday, I missed some this morning. I'm gonna have to start all over again. But I really want to get as knowledgeable as possible. My Uncle Billy knows a lot more than I do,
Sure.
so I can ask him questions
Right.
as well. But I would like to get to know as much as possible.
Yeah, it's a journey. You know, you can't expect yourself
It's a journey, all right.
to learn it all at once, and you get brain lock after a while.
Yeah.
I used to do 4 days of this, and I think people were starting to get brain lock, and so now I only do 3 days. I've been even thinking about just doing it 2 days,
Yeah.
and because people get brain lock, you know, and it's
It's feeding you with a
it's
fire hose.
yeah, exactly.
No, I understand that. It's just so interesting because I know the Constitution. I've made my kids read every night at dinner since they could read. They've been reading not the whole thing every night, but
Sure.
we've been reading a portion so that. And I told them, you know, beside the Bible, this is the most important document ever.
I agree.
And that's why there's no cursive in school, because if you can't read
Right.
the cursive,
Right.
you don't know what your rights are.
Right.
My oldest son is a big constitutionalist. My youngest son, all he cares about is cryptocurrency, but he's only 17.
Well, and my attitude is that the people that are interested in cryptocurrencies know there's a problem with the system, and don't want to have anything to do
That's
with
why
it.
Bitcoin was started.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I think they're all like-minded. They just don't know yet, and so everybody is in my brother just rails on all of the brain dead idiots out there, and I tell him that we were all given the opportunity to learn in our own time and in our own way, and we have to give them the same opportunity, and we just have to hope that they don't pay the ultimate price before they finally learn. And many of them will pay the ultimate price because of their ignorance. Mark Passio, I'm not sure you heard of Mark Passio?
No.
He's a guy on YouTube.
He was amazing.
It was, or he was, right? Or he's not anymore,
I
is he?
think he backed off from it. He was
Yeah.
a Satan church of-
But yeah, he had this, he was a priest in the Church of Satan. And
Oh,
so
jeez.
he's a brilliant guy. He doesn't do that anymore, but he was. But he's a brilliant guy, had to take Latin in high school. And so he knows these words and the derivative of all these words and talks about all of this stuff. And he talks about ignorance. He says the root word of ignorance is ignore. He says they're ignoring it. You know what I mean? And he's right. They're ignoring it. And it's out there, it's available, they're ignoring it.
Yeah,
And
you're right. You're right. I think we're just in a political climate. I'm just gonna shut this because I don't want to keep trading.
yeah,
Yeah. I see Mana diving and I'm like money, but I think the political climate that we're in now is like being in a pressure cooker.
yes.
It's
Yeah, but I think what they're doing, they're doing this on purpose right now.
Right.
yeah, and the people like him and you that are learning the laws is not the average person.
No.
So I can tell you, like I joined the Cross Bearers before I left for Georgia. Then I joined the Georgia 2nd Militia, not the Georgia 1 that grabbed the senator and did all that shit. And then I came back and we grew the Cross Bearers up here in New England from 800 members to almost 5,200 members.
Ooh, wow.
But they're not the guys that look to me for leadership are not. They want to know this shit, but they're more interested in shining their barrels. Like, let's fucking go, let's take it back. And I don't think that that's the way to do it, because then the average citizen's going to be like, oh, it's just a bunch of crazy hillbillies from these nobody towns that are shooting up whatever.
Well, that's the
Right.
theme that they always portray on the media anyway.
Yeah,
It doesn't
Well-
matter the cause, whether it be righteous or not.
yeah,
The media will always sit on the side of the government.
I agree.
And the righteous
Especially
will
the
be
left.
crushed.
Yeah,
So the way to
And
do
if
it
you-
is
if
to
you-
become part of the government by putting together a pettit grand jury.
okay.
Okay, a pettit grand
Say,
jury.
we are the government.
Yeah,
I
Once you
agree.
understand it,
We
we are the
people,
government.
Yeah,
a pettit
And
grand
a
jury
bunch of
is-
pirates have seized control.
A pettit grand jury.
We need to
are
take it
12
back.
people with one alternate. And what you can do is you have to do it county by county, and then you
I'm
can
just
go
gonna
in.
write down what you're saying. Bear with me for 1 second.
You can go into your county and you can set your own agenda. And if your agenda is to take care of corrupt judges, you'll start auditing the judges. You look at the bonds that they're issuing, the securities they're issuing.
Well, and I'm interested in that. I want to learn more about that.
yeah,
It's called a pettit jury.
Petite,
pettit.
petted or petite, depends on how you,
English or American.
yeah. That's right.
Pettit, and it's a group.
It's a small grand jury.
12 people plus the one alternate. They've got to be dedicated to working on the petite grand jury.
Yeah.
And
The best thing you could do there, Corey, is just hit record on, if you've got a recorder, you
Oh,
don't have to type it, you just record.
I'm gonna bug
Dictate
him
it.
later. I'm gonna bug him later and
Yeah.
ask him again anyway. So
Yeah, well,
like next week he'll get a text.
we'll be bugging you about trading anyway, so.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
my
okay.
pleasure.
Anyways, you know, it's a networking thing, right? Everybody has their own little thing that they know about, and so it's a networking thing.
I
And that's
just
why I
figure if
do
I
this.
can learn this and show this, or have you do, like show your presentation and stuff. I can have every month we meet up. There's anywhere between 2,000 and 3,000 people.
Yeah.
I could show it. Then they're gonna get that mentality out of their head of violence first, and let's do it this way.
If
It's a smart way.
I don't mind traveling somewhere as long as my expenses are covered. You know,
I
I
can
don't
pay
have
you
to
in
make a lot of
Bitcoin.
money. Huh?
I could pay you in Bitcoin.
Well, yeah, sure, yeah, that's no problem. And I don't mind traveling. There was some people in California that want me to come there, and I said I don't mind traveling. I don't need to make a lot of money. I just need to have my expenses covered.
Now, will you go to California with a sidearm?
No, I didn't come here with a sidearm either, because I didn't want to have to deal with that.
Yeah.
You got to pick your battles.
Yeah.
You
You've got
know, and-
multiple borders you're crossing there as well.
well,
state
that's
lines.
true.
So
That's true. Yeah.
some of them you're okay, and this one's
Yeah,
49 on the worst.
I thought Trump was gonna implement. He should have implemented that law that if you have a concealed carry permit, it's good for all 50 states.
It's coming.
I'm waiting.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
It's coming.
Well, and technically they have to recognize Texas law, and Texas law is open carry. So,
Yeah.
That'd be funny, open carrying in California.
yeah,
Did you
yeah.
see that video about the? So my dad worked for the ATF. He's
Uh-huh.
retired from the ATF. He can't even get a permit in
Really?
California
Wow.
to have a handgun. So he sent me this little meme video, and it was a guy who says, "Hey, have you ever met anyone who has a pistol permit in California?" He goes, "I carry in California all the time." He's like, "How did you get a permit?" He goes, "I don't." And he's like, "Then how do you carry?" He's like, "Because there's no law, state law in California that says that my dog can't carry a gun." So he puts this little vest on his dog and puts the gun on his dog.
Oh,
This is
there you go.
State law that says dogs cannot carry guns.
There you go. So it's always there available.
Yep, yep.
Interesting. Anyways, okay. So I think we've already gone over this one and this one. There is no such thing as the power of inherent sovereignty in the government of the United States. In this country, sovereignty resides in the people, and Congress can exercise no power by which they have not, by their Constitution, entrusted to it. And that's what you have to understand, is the Constitution is a trust indenture. But in considering the question before us, it must be borne in mind that there is no law of nations standing between the people of the United States and their government and interfering with their relation to each other. The powers of government and the rights of the citizens under it are positive practical regulations plainly written down. The people of the United States have delegated to it certain enumerated powers and forbidden it to exercise others. And that's, again,
Dred Scott.
Dred Scott, that's right, U.S. Supreme Court.
Oh, can I take a mulligan a second when we were talking about eminent domain?
Okay.
There's another way around it without getting a patent. Remember yesterday we were talking about this guy in Florida that's part of this United States of America government,
Oh, yeah.
where they did the meets and bounds of the entire United States.
Right.
And he was the one that got the business owner to give him a receipt for buying, or for when he paid for his services by giving him the truck. When he turned the title over, he gave him a receipt for the 21 silver Morgan dollars.
Right.
What he did on his property was he put in a common law lien on his own property. And
Common law lien is very, very powerful.
right, and so what happened was the state wanted to do eminent domain to widen the road. And they went to him and tried to get him to accept it, and he said, "I won't."
So they went and widened the road the other way?
No, they never changed the road.
Oh, is that right?
And they came back later and they wanted to do some drilling to check for something.
See, that's the point.
And he
Eminent
said-
domain only.
He said it's $1 million a hole, go ahead and drill. They left him alone.
That's the power of it, I'm telling you.
I know it.
You have no idea the power.
So I just wanted to bring that up because
Yeah.
there are alternative ways you can deal with these
Yeah,
things.
yeah, absolutely. There's lots of ways to skin a cat. The sovereignty of a state does not reside in the persons who fill the different departments of the government, but in the people from whom the government emanated, and they may change it at their discretion. Sovereignty then in this country abides with the constituency and not with the agent. And this remark is true both in reference to the federal and state governments. A delegate cannot delegate. An agent cannot delegate his functions to a subagent without knowledge or consent of the principal. And that's the reason I think that the Federal Reserve Act is unconstitutional, but nobody's challenged it. Anyways, without the knowledge or consent of the principal, the person to whom an office or duty is delegated cannot lawfully devolve the duty on another unless he be expressly authorized to do so. And I also think that that's the reason they make gold or silver coin available. Right here. This is real dollar. $1 it says on it.
Twang it.
Well. I don't know.
You gotta hold it with your
Yeah,
fingers.
anyways, that's $1. I think that's the reason, because then if you have no standing to challenge the Federal Reserve Act, because nobody's forcing you to use Federal Reserve notes, it's private. See what I'm saying?
I was gonna sell my silver this week,
I
should
would
hold on to
definitely,
it.
no, definitely, matter of fact, I would be buying it.
I think I have too much already.
I would be, I don't know how much you got, but,
I got one of those big, real heavy bars, and then it was $18,000 worth of Australian koala coins. So about 18 grand worth. But the price, I'm up 11.5% from when I bought it.
you know, it's up to you, but Cliff High says silver is gonna pop real soon before Christmas, he says. I think he's probably right, given all the turmoil that's going on out there.
So I should buy more than
I would say, and he said it's gonna go to 600. Penny Kelly said it's gonna go to 2,000 in spring. And Cliff High said that silver is eventually gonna go beyond the price of gold. And
I can see that.
well, he says there's an isotope of silver that has unique electrical characteristics, and they're just discovering it. And so, but he said that that's what's going to drive up the price.
So
And
if you buy derivatives, then that's not going to be shit. They're not going to
That's-
honor that.
no,
No.
of course not. No. And so you got to have the physical stuff in your possession.
Yeah, that's what I
And
have is
he said-
physical.
He said that there would be people would be their grandkids would be blessing the feet of their grandparents who were silver stackers, because families they won't have to work for several generations because of the silver, because of the value of the silver. They'll be going door to door looking for anything that's silver. The keyboard in that computer has silver in it.
Every electronic
There's
is silver, yeah.
there's a lot of silver in all sorts of things, and they'll be going door to door just begging you for anything that's silver.
I never was a silver stacker, but when my kids were younger, like 5 years old,
Uh-huh.
we used to do, they call it rolled coin hunting,
Right.
and I would go to the bank and buy $5,000 worth of $half and $1 coins, and
Right.
let them, shift through it and find the real silver ones.
Oh yeah.
And
Right.
we actually have it was pickles, like a pickle jar like that, filled with like just old
Right.
silver coins.
Junk silver. That's called junk silver.
Yeah, and that's what everyone's, from what I hear, that's what they're like, that's what you want, because
Yep.
that's meltable. And that's, you can give it away, there's no
Well,
attachment.
you don't have to melt it. Everybody knows it's a dime. And they look at it, and that's a silver dime. That's not a scrap metal dime like
Yeah.
the ones they have now. And so it's worth, right now it's probably worth about 10 times space, or at least 10 times space, maybe 20 times space.
I just bought silver the first night I was here. They had some thing on Shopping Network, and it was a 20 and a 21 Eagle, made from, one was like from Maryland, where they only make like a partial batch. I don't know. It was like $80 or something like that. But I thought I liked the way they looked. I'm sure I way overpaid spot price.
Yeah, I'll say you did.
For 2 coins. Yeah.
Spot's 24, and with premium it's 34. We saw on BGASC, right?
Right. Yeah. The premium. Well, at least at this place here was $12 over spot. So they're all charging a premium.
Yeah.
And the premiums have been going up. Anyways, I'm waiting for it to pop. I've got about 500 ounces, I think. I'd like to have more. I'm waiting. Cliff High said that what will happen is it'll go up by $1 one day. Of course, today's Sunday, it's not going to go up. And then the next day it'll go up by $1, and then it'll go up by $1, then the next day it'll go up by $2. and then the next day it'll go up by $2 again, and then the next day it'll go up by $5, and then the next day it'll go up by $20, and then it'll be off to the races. And he said silver, $600 silver has been in his data sets since the 1990s, and people are calling him crazy, but you can see with all the turmoil and stuff going on nowadays, I mean, they've been rigging it big time, but they're essentially, if you think about it, they're paying you to buy it at the current price, because if you look at, there's guys that, a guy by the name of, what's his name? He does he calculates inflation based on the old way of calculating inflation, and back during like the Reagan administration when they calculated inflation, he said that if you took $50 silver and you calculated the rate of inflation with the old way, he said it'd be $600 right now.
If they go to a CBDC, do you think credit will be reset? Like the full spectrum survival guy last week said, max out all your credit cards, it doesn't matter. Max them out.
They'll be forgiven.
The debt is just going to be wiped anyway, so max everything out.
I don't know.
They've been saying that for years, and people have lost their homes.
And I always pay my credit cards on time and off 100%. And this month I didn't. I paid the more than the minimum, but I'm like, should I pay it off or should I just max everything out?
You know, that's up to you. My attitude is they're all thieves.
I'll just pay it.
And
It's not that much money when you think about what your trades are producing, so why fuck around with worrying about.
Well, I don't have to work again. Like if I wanted to, I retired last year. I just started this business June of this year.
Did you?
Yeah, I retired last year. I've almost 10,000 Bitcoin, so there's no reason for me to go get like a 9. I do this because I love to do it, and I feel like, I don't know I don't want to bring religion into it, but I feel like God blessed me, and it's my duty to help as many other people receive that blessing as I did, or at least show them. You can bring water to a horse, but if he doesn't drink it,
right,
there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, you can.
That's why I'm so passionate about like these trades I'm making aren't making me money. It's making my clients money.
Right.
So that's why I do it. That's why I'm so passionate about it, and I'm glad that's why my son, he knows he doesn't have to work, but he loves helping people.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Right. Yeah, well, I'm interested, that's for sure.
I'll answer every question you have, and
I have, I've done it before and I haven't had much success at it, and so I wouldn't, and I like cryptos for sure. I think that's the way of the future.
Yeah.
And but I like to diversify. I don't have hardly any Bitcoin. I've got, I don't know, what do you think of Tezos? And
Tezos is a great privacy coin, right? So what Tezos does is allows me or you to send Tezos to anybody anonymously. It's 100% untrackable. Whereas Bitcoin, if I send you $10 in Bitcoin, they can track the address, right? But they can't track who I am. Tezos is a privacy coin.
Well, they can actually. I've read articles about how they've charged people for money laundering that were because they can actually go by IP addresses and find out who you are.
Always use a VPN.
Right.
Always use a VPN.
Right.
They're dirt cheap.
Right.
And if you go with like a quality company like Nord,
Right.
we're actually an affiliate for NordVPN. Costs you like $3 a month.
Right.
And I always use a VPN. Or if you buy a hardware wallet, there's no way to track that.
Oh, okay. That's
because there's no IP address linked to a USB. So,
right.
You know what I mean? It just.
But still, it had to log on the internet somewhere.
Correct, but you can log on at Starbucks.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Anywhere.
Yeah. McDonald's.
Yeah, anywhere. I mean, my Wi-Fi at my office, we have a secured Wi-Fi, and then we have like another Wi-Fi that we all use for everything. But that secured Wi-Fi is any transaction over $10,000 is through that secure. We don't even accept clients for less than $10,000. So it's, if we're making transactions on that private one, if I'm doing a $200 trade or $2,000,
Right.
I just do it on the regular
Right,
internet.
right.
But I always use a VPN either way.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so let's keep moving here. What about Theta? What do you think of Theta?
I love Theta. Actually,
right?
I have a Theta T-shirt upstairs.
Is that right?
I don't know if you saw it. Just signed I know I'm not supposed to love Google, but I do.
Really?
Yeah. They just signed a deal with Google. So you know how when you watch a YouTube video and people tip they can do a membership or tip. That's all going to Theta.
Oh, is that right?
So when you tip them from as soon as they launch, I want to say February 17th or 19th, that will be all in Theta. So you basically, you don't have to convert your money to Theta. You can buy chunks of Theta, but every time you tip it, it's going to convert it from US dollar or Canadian dollar or wherever you are in the world to Theta, because then now you don't have to keep track of all these different currencies and swaps of value. It's all Theta. So I invested in Theta the first day it came out, and we're up 58,000% right now.
Wow, I know. I've got some Theta. I've got about 4,000 Theta, and I think I paid like about $200 for them.
Yeah.
And it's like about $35,000 right now.
Yeah.
But,
it'll 10x in this year, and then within a year from now.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, positive.
My problem is it's called a My Crypto wallet that has a bunch of addresses in it,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to figure out how to get it out of there.
The best thing is just if you make an appointment, like on the website, you make an appointment with me, and we do a video call, and I can take you step by step.
Okay, good.
How to
Yeah,
do it.
yeah. I'll definitely do that, because I have a Theta wallet, but I can't put it in there because I can't get it out of this My Crypto wallet. This My Crypto wallet has a whole bunch of addresses, and anyways, it was Jason at 4 that recommended doing that, and I went and did it, and I got the 8-word seed phrase.
Yeah.
But I didn't write down all of the addresses in that wallet that I sent it to. So, but I know that
I
I
don't know
can,
where it's sitting in all the addresses.
which address. Yeah, some of it. I can go to the website that I sent it from and look up I think I can get those addresses off of the. I bought it off of a crypto exchange, off of Ethereum exchange, and so I think I can go there and look up the addresses that I sent it from.
Yeah.
And get the addresses that it
Yeah.
went to.
So all you have to do is you go to etherscan.io.
Right,
And put
yeah.
that address, and
Right.
it'll show you what wallet
Right.
you sent it.
Yeah, it should do that. Yeah, but that was what I wasn't expecting, to have all those different addresses in there. Usually all I do is I remember that 8-word seed phrase or 12-word seed phrase. You see what I'm saying? And he didn't say anything about it. Anyways, yeah, don't get me going. Anyways, let's keep moving. Without knowledge or consent, the person to whom an office or duty is delegated cannot lawfully devolve the duty on another unless he be expressly authorized to do so. That's a maxim of law. A delegated power cannot again be delegated. A deputy cannot have or appoint a deputy. These are all maxims.
Hey, go back to the previous slide. What's a delegate? In that, a delegate, it says a delegate. What is a delegate?
Well, like a deputy sheriff.
So a deputy sheriff would be a delegate of the sheriff?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Right. But I think that the Federal Reserve Act is unconstitutional because Congress delegated their authority to make money, or some fake money, although they didn't delegate the authority to coin money, because the coin money is right here. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think that the Federal Reserve Act might be unconstitutional. I gotta use the restroom, I'll be right back.
I was going to say, I think a lot of the departments are unconstitutional too, because they're all delegated powers.
Yeah, that's
And it's sub-delegated because we, the sovereigns, gave the powers, delegated powers to Congress.
Right.
they subsequently delegated powers to departments.
And Congress was probably not fully authorized to do that based on their structure coming out of the Reconstruction, right?
Yeah.
Because they're part of the federated government. They had no authority in the states.
There was something that came up about that within the last 2 years. There was a particular department that had been delegated authority to do something, and then they got called out on it because they said that the authority couldn't be delegated because it was an express authority of Congress. I just don't remember. It was something over the last 2 years, a department over the last 2 years that came up in the news, and other people brought it up.
Okay, so moving on. It is true that in common law, the duty of the Attorney General is to represent the king, he being the embodiment of the state, but under the democratic form of government now prevailing, people are king, so the Attorney General's duties are to that sovereign rather than to the machinery of government. And so the Attorney General, and you got to remind the Attorney Generals about this, and matter of fact, it's perjury of oath, if you think about it, if they don't. And the problem is that they presume that you're one of the slaves. You see what I'm saying?
Well, I think the other thing is when they say the people, they're looking at the people as the collective, not necessarily you.
Well, you're giving them that excuse, but I disagree.
Okay.
Because the courts have said in numerous cases that each individual person is sovereign,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about that. The law of Congress do not extend into the territorial limits of the states, but have force only in the District of Columbia and other places that are within the exclusive jurisdiction of the national government. Matter of fact, they might want you to think that, and that gets them off the hook.
It does.
But really, everybody is sovereign. We're all kings and queens. Remember, that's what the courts have said. We have all the rights of the king, the former sovereign, and the exclusive jurisdiction in which the United States have in ports and dockyards ceded to them is derived from the express assent of the states by whom the cessions are made. In other words, and we were talking about this, ceded territory, and Nelson was showing us that document that had all of the ceded territory in the different states, right? And some of it is actually ceded, and some of it is just the federal government buys it.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
They
Well,
purchase right.
that is not, that still is subject to state law in those cases. The exclusive jurisdiction that the United States have in ports and dockyards ceded to them is derived from the express assent of the states by whom the cessions are made. It can be derived in no other authority, because without it, the authority of the state would be supreme and exclusive therein.
It could be derived in no other manner because without it, the authority of the state would be supreme and exclusive therein.
So then, if the land has not actually been ceded by the state legislature to the federal government, the state is supreme.
Got it.
And even like if it's a federal courthouse that hasn't been ceded to the federal government, then the state laws are still applicable in that.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I agree with that.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Declaration of Independence. The Magna Carta is called the Great Charter of English Liberty. The Canadian Handbook for Judges cites the Magna Carta on page 77. Magna Carta says we will not deny or defer any man either justice or right. So in Canada, they talk about the Magna Carta. This is a Supreme Court of Canada case that talks about how the Magna Carta came to be. We were talking about this a couple days ago.
Yeah.
The Magna Carta is not a unilateral act emanating solely from the spontaneous will of the king, as the charters of the predecessors of John. Neither is it a treaty, for we cannot say it was concluded between two legitimate and independent sovereignties, nor between two nations, nor is it a law. The barons do not appear in it as subjects, for they are freed from their promise of fidelity, and the king, brought captive, placed before them, submitted to the conditions which the conquerors imposed upon him. Magna Carta is therefore a contract, but resembles a treaty concluded between two nations, in that one of the parties, in virtue of the law of war, can impose its will upon the other. And so, that's essentially what's happening with the cops, okay? Is that under the law of war, they can get away with all sorts of stuff. If you understand the Uniform Commercial Code, okay, because that's the law of war is governed basically by the Uniform Commercial Code. That's international law, private international law, and they're forcing you to sign something, right? So you just put without prejudice. And we're going to talk about that. That's one of my next presentations. I'm not sure if we're going to get to it today, but because I wanted to have Carl have a chance to speak too. But anyways, that's one of my other presentations. Is how to put to put without prejudice. Matter of fact, he did it on his driver's license.
Yeah.
And it's perfect. I love that. I've got to do that. I have an Arizona driver's license, and it was issued to me in 2001. Still valid.
Really?
Yeah.
Since 2001?
Yeah. It expires in 2022, on my birthday next year.
I still have my
11
Georgia
years.
license too.
This is still valid.
11 years.
Yeah. Well, it's actually, my son got one, and it's valid until he turns 65.
Okay, so
So
they
his
want you to
will be
renew.
valid for 40 years.
Wow.
Anyways, so next year I'm going to have to get a new one,
There you go. Now you can try something.
and I'll put
with
without prejudice
Yep.
in that little spot there. Anyways,
and you'll thank yourself for it.
I'll tell you. So a citizen of one state is a citizen of every other state in the Union. The individual may stand upon his constitutional rights as a citizen. He's entitled to carry on his private business in his own way. His power to contract is unlimited. He owes no duty to the state or to his neighbors to divulge his business or to open his doors to an investigation so far as it may tend to incriminate him. He owes no such duty to the state, since he sees nothing therefrom beyond the protection of his life, liberty, and property. His rights are such as existed by the law of the land, long antecedent to the organization of the state. Many people don't realize the significance of that statement, okay? They existed by the law of the land, long antecedent to the organization of the state. That means before the state.
Yeah.
And so our rights were always here, by the law of the land.
Natural laws.
That's right. And can only be taken from him by due process of law and in accordance with the Constitution. Among his rights are a refusal to incriminate himself and the immunity of himself and his property from arrest or seizure except under a judicial power warrant, a warrant of the law. And I can tell you in Texas, I haven't seen a real warrant yet. And they arrest people all the time. They're capiases, that's right. Matter of fact, in the DC code, it says that a bench warrant is a capias.
What's the distinction? Could you explain that real quick?
What do you mean?
Between a capias and a warrant?
A warrant has to be signed by a judge. A capias,
A capias is a
I can
warrant
show
that's
you.
not signed by a judge?
I
Is
can
that-
show you.
Usually signed by the law
And a
clerk.
capias
Right.
is usually
The
civil,
law clerks.
correct?
Clerks of- The law
Yeah.
clerks.
Whereas a warrant
That's
is
who
usually
signs
it.
either
It's
way,
clerk of
civil or
court.
criminal.
Yeah.
A
Well,
clerk.
a warrant has to be ready. It has to be criminal.
Clerk
That's
of
a
the
real
clerk.
warrant.
I thought you were
It'll
saying
only be
clock.
criminal.
Right,
Oh,
C-L-O-C-K.
Yeah.
No,
The clerk of the
the
court.
clerk of the court.
Got it.
English language again.
Here, let me show you. Let me show you what I think is a capias.
Because I had a capias put out on me for, they said I didn't show up for my court date for child support, and I was in the court. And the magistrate was like, put out a capias for Mr. Kyoki Kaluna. I'm like, I'm here. Like, how are you gonna say I'm not here? I signed in, I checked in, like, it's all a scam.
Is Kyoki your real name?
That's my birth name, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not, but you go by Cody?
Corey.
Corey.
Yeah. So my father is Hawaiian and Samoan,
Oh.
hence the Hawaiian flag. And my mom is from Quebec, so he's like 6'6", 6'7", 330, and my mom's like 5'1", $110. So they basically gave me his belly and her height, but I'm named after him. Different middle name though.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to pronounce his middle name.
Keoki is
See this?
K-E-I.
K-E-O-K-I.
And the last name?
K-A-L-U-N-A.
See this? Look at this. The clerk issued this. Here's the deputy clerk. They're saying they sent this, they issued this to notify the attached document that has been entered in the above styled case. That's the clerk. The clerk signed it.
So what are the implications of that? You just ignore it?
That's not a signature. Well, in their system, you know, they took the money. I'll probably, it becomes a civil matter. Think about it. So you have to sue them.
Really? So it's not a judge's signature?
No.
And it's not a
No, the
clerk's
clerk
signature.
went and did that. If the judge was to sign it, it'd have a signature. See, look at that. It's in the same ink.
Yeah.
See that? That's a capias.
So a capias is a warrant, but it's signed by a clerk of the court.
Judgment nisi.
Nisi Prius.
Anyways. So, yeah, that's a capias.
Okay, thank
But
you.
there's other ones. I think that a lot of them are just computer entries. That I think there's a lot of them are just computer entries. But I think in Texas at least, I think it's always signed. It's always the clerk that issues them. I think it's always the clerk, and that's why I go after the clerks in Texas. If they give me an opportunity, I'll go after them like a bloodhound. And anyways.
That case law there, the Hale v. Henkel,
Yes.
was one I actually used in a letter that I sent back to a lawyer with regards, I think it was the second letter I sent, but with regards to them coming after my wife for money, for damages,
Right.
property damages. She wasn't responsible for them, but they were asking questions that they wanted her to answer. I used that as a reference.
There you
part
go.
of it, and then
She doesn't have to
sent it
tell
back.
you anything.
Yeah, sent it back. That went away, by the
Do
way.
you want my business?
Yeah.
After they turned around and...
There's a guy that I know that's gotten subpoenas from the U.S. attorney to show up in court, and he sent him back a letter and said, sure, no problem, I'll show up in court if you send me your statutory delegated authority to require me to show up in
What
court.
do you use for a cell phone?
Never heard another word.
What's that?
Yeah.
Who's your provider?
They do that all the time too.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
You want a new phone?
What's that?
You want a new phone?
What do you mean, you have a telephone?
No, Telo's GSM, so they just buy AT&T space.
Yeah.
But I have my brand new Pixel 6 Pro, so now I have a brand new Pixel 5 Pro that I'm not using.
So there's
Oh, really?
Yeah, so. if
there's
you want-
two
I'll take
major
your phone,
classes of
I'll just give it
citizens.
to you.
Sure, I'll take it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, sir.
There's two major classes of citizens, state and federal.
Thanks.
All persons born and naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. That's the 14th Amendment, Section 1. And then this is Bowling versus Commonwealth, 1867. The 14th Amendment referred to slavery, consequently the only persons embraced by its provisions and for which Congress was authorized to legislate in the matter were those then in slavery. And in fact, there's good reason the 14th Amendment wasn't even ratified properly, because the Reconstruction Acts, all of the southern states, actually there's northern states that refused to ratify it too. But I think Maryland was one of the states that refused to ratify it. Anyways, they put the southern states, they used the Reconstruction Act to put the southern states under martial law. Tennessee did ratify it, but the rest of the southern states, the military governors under the Reconstruction Acts ratified it, which, you know, So it's,
I
there's,
understand as well that some ratified it and then withdrew later on.
yeah, no doubt.
So what's the Commonwealth under bowling versus Commonwealth? What,
I don't know.
Yeah, which Commonwealth, I guess.
There is in our political system a government of each of the several states and a government of the United States. Each is distinct from the other and has citizens of its own. One may be a citizen of a state and yet not a citizen of the United States. There is a clear distinction between national citizenship and state citizenship. Instead, this provision protects only those rights peculiar to being a citizen of the federal government. It does not protect those rights which relate to state citizenship. That's Jones versus Temmer, 1993. Citizenship of the United States does not entitle the citizens to the privileges and immunities of citizens of the state, since privileges of one are not the same as the other. The privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States do not necessarily include all the rights protected by the First 8 Amendments to the federal Constitution against the powers of the federal government. The only absolute and unqualified right of a United States citizen is to residence within the territorial boundaries of the United States. The only absolute and unqualified right of a United States citizen is to residence.
so if you want to be a resident,
Yeah, right.
Well, even if you did, everything else is a privilege.
That's
I
right.
know the rights.
That's right. Such construction ignores the rights of the citizen in virtue of its, the rights of a state in virtue of its sovereignty to confer citizenship within its own limits. Where the rights incident to such a status are not of the citizenship mentioned in the federal government, it does not follow that because one has all the rights and privileges of a citizen of a state, he must be a citizen of the United States. Such a distinction has long been recognized in this county. And that's Mississippi court case. But it's actually 19 Howard 393. That's the U.S. Supreme Court case. Oh, no, that's reference. See that, and it's a Mississippi court case. The rights of original judicial citizens of the states as such are not under consideration in the 14th Amendment. They stand as they did before the 14th Amendment and are fully guaranteed by other provisions. So the 14th Amendment doesn't affect the state citizens, state nationals. Civil rights under the 14th Amendment are for federal citizens and not state citizens. Federal citizens as parents have no right to the custody of their infant children except subject to the paramount right of the state. That's how they get in there and steal their children. And so there's family court is so notorious for abusing so many people, and so there's getting to be quite a large group of people that are, women, especially moms, that have been abused and had their kids stolen, and that wakes them up big time,
So Glenn, what would you recommend to a new family that's going to have a baby? What should they do regarding signing the birth certificate or signing as an
I would look into a home birth. Now, whether they sign the birth certificate or not, I guess is up to them. That Charlie Dan on our group says that having that U.S. citizen that has certain advantages, you can still do interstate commerce and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I agree to some extent because, most kids, when they come out of high school, they have no idea who they are. They have no idea, even if they're homeschooled, they don't know how to, at least most of them won't know how to make money to live. You know what I mean? And they can't, they're not, they kind of have to go out and learn what the real world is like, and then find out that maybe they want to be self-employed or something like that. You see what I'm saying?
So what about claiming the footprints and the handprints? Because
that's all commercial.
well, you see, the situation is that they take your footprints before the baby's footprints before they hit the ground, they're defeated. They're automatically defeated.
Yeah.
And so if you take their footprints before they do and put them in the birth certificate, they're not defeated anymore.
I think
You claim all the equity from the hands and the feet.
See, now you're talking international law. Equity, that's a word in international law.
That's fine.
Okay?
But
Well-
if you're gonna operate in commerce, we're all gonna operate in commerce at some time, right? Gets back to what Charlie.
I just assume not, quite frankly. I try not to as much as I can.
But you
Sometimes,
do.
sometimes they're dragging me in there. You know what I mean?
You bought your dinner the other night.
I know, I know. But actually, that's a private contract. That has nothing to do with commerce. You can do private contracts without being involved in commerce. Commerce is when you're involved with corporations and all of that. Okay, and so that's a
the
private
government-
contract.
Yeah, but the government only has jurisdiction over interstate commerce as well.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So commerce really is interstate or international commerce. That's a private. You can do a private contract without being involved in commerce. And so whether
Okay, so
I
we-
buy my dinner and they accept the tender of that Federal Reserve note, that's up to them.
See, when you buy your driver license, you're dealing with a federated state.
I know.
So you are.
I know.
You are basically going into their.
I agree.
And you're agreeing to follow those laws,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well, unless you.
But
you
that's conditional. That's when you're carrying passengers or property for hire.
can, right.
It's only when you're carrying passengers or property
Well,
for
I know
hire.
that that's true because my buddy's nephew, I don't want to say he's a piece of shit, he's a young kid, he's a troublemaker, you know, but he could turn out just fine.
Right.
But he got caught driving without a license like 11 times. And they go to court, and the judge is like, basically, there's nothing I can do because he wasn't breaking the law. If he were to have his license and he was driving drunk, but it was an unregistered vehicle, uninsured vehicle,
Sounds like he's sovereign.
and well, he's in jail right now. But the judge, I think, I got to give props to that judge because he could have said,
Right.
let's hand this and whatever. But I didn't find out about what you're saying now until my buddy said, no, I guess if you don't have a license, then you're not voluntarily committing to their,
Here's the way.
There's a
See
Supreme
the
Court
signatures?
case.
yeah.
So
Without prejudice.
the quite frankly, the only
No
reason
contracts. No
the
contracts.
only reason I have a driver's license is if I want to rent a car. I have to have a driver's license
And
to
to
rent a
avoid
car.
getting shot by the side of the road.
Well,
That's what Boris always
actually,
says to him.
whatever. I mean, Boris can use whatever excuse he wants to use. That's not me. Okay, let him say what he wants to say. But this is, my event here. Okay, and so Boris, if he wants to come and say a spiel, he can come. He's been here before.
Who's bored?
But-
Am I missing something?
He's a guy that deals with
Boris.
it in their system, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I try not to. I try and deal with it common law.
So it's a person who's just not here.
Yeah, that's
okay,
right.
I was just making sure it's not something that I needed to know.
No, yeah.
Just
So-
another person.
At any rate, I try not to. The only reason I have a driver's license, quite frankly, is if I have to rent a car. I've been all over the world. I've been across the pond dozens of times. I've been all over Europe. I've been in Africa, Middle East, Asia. I haven't been to Australia. I wouldn't mind checking it out sometime, except not
Not
when it's
now.
a dictatorship. Yeah,
Yeah.
no shit. But so the point is that you go over there. You can't. Sometimes public transportation is pretty good, but I like renting a car. I don't want to have my own wheels.
Yeah.
And so that's really the only reason that I have a driver's license is because I don't carry passengers or property for hire, and I have no intention of it, and I live in Arizona, and in fact, let's see. Yeah. Here's a letter from an Arizona senator, if you want to look at it. I don't know, does anybody else want to see this?
Yeah, it's,
I have that already. in
It's
my-
probably the letter that you have. You talked about it.
Yeah, but I didn't see the apostille on it.
Did you want to see it?
I
You
know
saw
it.
Said,
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. It's part of my documentation.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Yeah, absolutely. And that's available digitally. I can email that to you.
you have it.
I have it. Yeah. Thank you.
So the point being is that that's one of the reasons I like Arizona, and I think that's one of the reasons that they don't mess with people in Arizona that have a homemade plate on their vehicle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's definitely completely different than Connecticut or New Jersey or New York.
Right, right. So, anyways, back to the topic at hand. In Canada, they've had the same thing. They have a charter that talks about citizens of Canada. Well, those are federal citizens. It says the courts have told us laws of Canada are federal laws. Citizens of Canada are federal citizens. So Canada, the provinces are states. And this is part of the charter. Every citizen of Canada has, on the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Section 3, Section 6.1, 6.2. And so the rights of citizens of Canada, every citizen of Canada has the right to vote in elections, and I know people in Canada that have revoked their voter registration. And right to vote in the election of members of the House of Commons and the Legislative Assembly. Notwithstanding anything in this charter, the rights and freedoms referred to it are guaranteed equally to male and female persons, fictitious entities.
Well, if you look at the voter registration, when you sign up to register to vote, it says you have to be a U.S. citizen for 30 days before you can be granted voter registration. So you're claiming to be a U.S. citizen.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, it actually says, there's a statement underneath the signature that says, I swear under penalty of perjury, I'm a U.S. citizen.
Right.
So I'm sorry, but I'm not registered to vote. It's evidence that they, U.S. citizens of Canada, have not the political rights which are vested in citizens of the states. They're not constituents of any community which is vested with any sovereign power of government. Their position partakes more of the character of subjects than of citizens. They are subject to the laws of the United States or Canada as applicable, but have no voice in its management. If they're allowed to make it laws, the validity of these laws is derived from the sanction of a government in which they're not represented. Mere citizenship they may have, but the political rights of citizens they cannot enjoy. Citizen, national, subject may indicate being a member of a sovereign state, especially one showing democratic forms and usages, owing its allegiance, sharing in individual political rights. A subject may imply a state of subjection to a person, such as a monarch, without much sense of membership in a political community or sharing in political rights. A national is a more general word, which may apply to anyone owing permanent allegiance to a nation, and indicates one belonging to a broad category, which includes both people who are legally citizens or subjects, and also people who have not attained such legal status.
So how?
So you want to be a national is what you want to be.
Yeah, but I don't want to claim allegiance, permanent allegiance to any nation other than the.
Well, as a national, you do. You have allegiance to, I have allegiance to all my friends and neighbors, right?
I have allegiance to God.
Well, that's true, but you still, you don't want to betray your friends and neighbors. That's called treason.
No, but you don't want to have false gods in front of you either, right?
That's true. Yeah, that's true. And so that's a good point. That's an interesting point. And so you could use your firmly held religious beliefs.
You can still respect.
But you're still going to be considered a national, I can guarantee you.
Yeah, I
A subject, constitutional law, one that owes allegiance to a sovereign and is governed by his laws. The natives of Great Britain are subjects of the British government. Men in free governments are subjects as well as citizens. As citizens, they enjoy rights and franchises. As subjects, they are bound to obey the laws. The term is little used in this sense in countries enjoyed by a republican form of government. Well, that's interesting. Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition.
So if you're sovereign, who do you declare allegiance to? Isn't it your creator? If you're a king, don't you?
I would declare oath of allegiance to.
Alpha Group Consulting.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I think I've actually got one that I've done that was, I patterned it after someone else. I did a long time ago. But the thing is that you don't have to declare allegiance, okay?
Right.
Because
I was gonna
if
say, why
you're
would
born
you
here,
if you're sovereign anyway?
if you're born here, you don't have to
Right.
declare allegiance.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Anyways, in our opinion, it's not the intention of the legislature to restrict the operation of the statute to those only who were subjects of the United States government and to exclude therefrom unnaturalized residents of foreign birth, whether black or white. So they're talking about subjects. 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment were designed mainly for the protection of the newly emancipated Negroes. Upon the other hand, the 14th Amendment on the subject of citizenship declares that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Here there is a limitation to persons born or naturalized in the United States, which is not extended to persons born in any place subject to their jurisdiction. And so, yeah, they're talking about DC is what they're talking about there.
Yeah.
That's the U.S. Supreme Court, Downs versus Bidwell.
But it says and of their states. It said that. Go back to that slide a second.
Sorry?
Go back to the previous slide just a second. It
Yes.
says and of the
That's
states
in the
wherein they
14th.
reside.
That's the 14th Amendment.
Right.
Um,
So that's what Charlie Dan puts his stake in. He can be a U.S. citizen or he can be a state citizen, right? So Charlie says that, you know, if I want to be a U.S. citizen, I can be one. If I want to be a state citizen,
Right.
I can, because that's what
Right.
it says there.
Right, yeah. The persons declared to be citizens are all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. The evident meaning of these last words is not merely subject in some respect or degree to the jurisdiction of the United States, but completely subject. So I think that's the Supreme Court explaining that. That's Elk versus Wilkins, 1884, U.S. Supreme Court. The term citizen of the United States is analogous to the term subject in the common law. Citizenship is a term of municipal law. Citizenship carries with it the idea of connection or identification with the state and of participation of its functions, and as such applies much more than residence. The unborn are not included in the definition of persons as used in the 14th Amendment. See, that was U.S. citizens can murder their children. They're unborn. While the 14th Amendment,
Say that one more time?
this is the Roe v. Wade case.
Yeah.
The unborn are not included in the definition of person as used in the 14th Amendment.
That's if you're a U.S. citizen, but if you're a state citizen, what does that say?
Well, the state citizens can't murder their unborn children, then,
Right.
can they? But
Nor-
most of the people are a bunch of brain dead idiots, and
I
they just
know.
go ahead and do it
They don't
anyway.
realize the whole eugenics thing is real.
Oh, yeah. And while the 14th Amendment does not create a national citizenship, it has the effect of making that citizenship paramount and dominant instead of derivative and dependent upon state citizenship. U.S. Supreme Court again. So what they're saying is that originally, under the original Constitution, state citizenship was paramount and dominant over U.S. citizenship. You had to be a state citizen first before you could be a U.S. citizen. And because of the 14th Amendment, it made U.S. citizenship paramount and dominant over state citizenship. So essentially, what they're saying is if you're a state citizen, you have to assert it. You have to tell them that you're a state citizen.
Yeah.
And provide evidence, which is maybe a genealogical history or something. Citizenship as a political status may be defined and privilege limited by Congress. See, and the key in all of this, and I think Carl's got it right, is to deal with it with the cops on the side of the road so it never goes to the judges, because you see how the judges are going to rule. And so you just deal with it on the cops and get it dealt with before it ever gets to that point.
By appealing to the fact that they, when you hand them that document, now they have liability, right?
They can't come up with the good faith clause.
Right? Yeah, they all have good
Not
faith.
acting in good faith because I've told them.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, you have to be acting in good faith to have.
There's all the
limited
states.
liability.
All the states have good faith statutes, basically saying that that as long as the officer acts in good faith, that they can't be sued.
Ah, okay, so by ignoring the document, they're not acting in good faith, is what you're saying.
Yeah, because I'm going to make it part of the record. And I tell them that this is part of the record. So if there's any further legal ramifications to this, it's going to be part of the record. So you better read it now, because if you have to deal with this later, it's going
to be in the court case.
It's going to be in the court case, and you're going to have to answer to why you continued with your actions when you were informed or given the opportunity to be informed of my status and what was going to happen to you if you ignored it.
Right.
So
That's good, I like that.
Yeah, for sure. Anyways, the term resident and citizen of the United States is distinguished from a citizen of one of the several states in that the former is the special class of citizen created by Congress. The 14th Amendment referred to slavery. Consequently, the only persons embraced by its provisions for which Congress was authorized to legislate in the manner were those then in slavery. Well, I've already said that one. No white person born within the limits of the United States and subject to their jurisdiction or born without those limits and subsequently naturalized under their laws owes his status of citizenship to the recent amendments of the federal government, federal constitution. So that's obviously Civil War era or early 1900s. Mm-hmm. All citizens of the United States shall have, this is an actual statute that exists today. All citizens of the United States shall have the same right in every state and territory as is enjoyed by white citizens thereof to inherit, purchase, lease, sell, hold, convey real and personal property. That's 42 U.S.C. 1982. Look it up. It's there.
that's weird, because that's the one right before the USC 1983.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Therefore, the U.S. citizens residing in one of the states of the Union are classified as property and franchises of the federal government as an individual entity. That's a summary of that case, I would like to add.
That sucks.
Sorry?
I said that sucks. U.S. citizens residing in one of the states of the Union are classified as property?
Yeah. Well, they're fictitious entities. What it is, a U.S. citizen's a fictitious entity.
Yeah, so that's why
So-
when you go into court, you say, does the state register and record people as property?
Well,
And they go, what?
It's Article 4. It says in Article 4 of the Constitution, I think it's Section 2, it says Congress shall have power to make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property of the United States.
Of the United States, right? You're writing in one of the states of the Union, though, it says.
Yeah, well,
That's not a territory.
franchises of the federal government. So no matter which state, and there's lots of cases that talk about it, that a U.S. citizen upon leaving the District of Columbia becomes involved in interstate commerce. As a resident, does not have the common law right to travel as a citizen of one of the several states.
That's also, if you remember, why, what's his name, the senator from South Carolina was asking a question of the judge who was up for a nomination for the Supreme Court, and he asked, well, if a U.S. citizen was in Afghanistan, for instance.
Right. That was the Kavanaugh hearings.
That's right, the Kavanaugh hearings. Lindsey Graham was
Oh,
the
yeah,
senator
yeah.
asking the questions. And that was it. That was to...
Congress
To
has
conclude.
authority over U.S. citizens anywhere on the planet.
wherever they are, yeah. And that was literally what he was saying in that question.
Of U.S. citizens, but if you're a
Right.
state citizen, they don't.
They don't have any authority, no, absolutely not.
Okay.
But that was the point. And that just said in states. It didn't expand it to the world. Lindsey Graham expanded it to the world.
Right.
So he was saying it doesn't matter where you are. If you leave, Maryland for some other state, we're still going to get you. But if you go to Afghanistan because you think you're safe, you're not, because we still have jurisdiction over you even there.
But when they say states there, you know, if you click the hot link in the statute, it says Puerto Rico, Guam, it's the insular states. And
Of course.
You don't know if it's the insular states or the states of the Union. There are 50.
It would be, you know, in a statute, it would be the insular states.
Okay, so
I mean, you have to look in the statute, like in the transportation code, the federal transportation code, you know, the Constitution talks about post roads and all that stuff. And so actually the post office, it'd be in the post office, not the transportation code. In the post office is in all the states. So then it would actually say, it would list the territories and then say in the 50 states. It would actually say the 50 states or something like that. See what I'm saying? And the reason is because the post office is in all the 50 states.
if you go back to that previous slide, second, does the state there mean the insular states? Classifies property and franchises
That one there,
state.
well, that's a court case.
in one of the states of the Union, it says.
Yeah, I would say that'd probably be one of the 50 states.
Yeah.
Because they do, again, one of the several states, and the bottom one, that would be one of the 50 probably, but that's the courts.
Oh, the key word there is individual entity.
Right.
So that's the
Right.
birth certificate.
Right,
That's the-
yeah. And there's other court cases that talk about it where the District of Columbia expands wherever the U.S. citizen goes. There's court cases that talk about that. I'm not sure if I'll have that in here. I think I do. After the adoption of the 14th Amendment, a bill which became the first Civil Rights Act was introduced in the 39th Congress, the major purpose of which is to secure to the recently freed Negroes all the civil rights secured to white men, none other than citizens of the United States or within the provisions of the Act. Subject, one who owes allegiance to a sovereign and is governed by that sovereign's laws. Speaking generally, we may say that the terms subject and citizen are synonymous. Subjects and citizens are alike in those whose relation to the state is personal, not merely territorial, permanent, and not merely temporary. These equivalent, however, is not absolute, for in the first place, the term subject commonly limited to monarchical forms of government, while the term citizens more especially applicable in the case of republics. Finally, it's to be noticed that the term subject is capable of a different and wider application in which it includes all members of the body politic, whether they're citizens or resident aliens. All such persons are subjects, all being subject to the power of the state and to its jurisdiction, and as owing to it, at least temporarily, fidelity and obedience.
So in CEDAM, they say the best status you can have is non-person, non-resident. You don't want to be a person because that's a two-dimensional
Right.
entity, and you don't want to be a resident because now you're part of the United States.
Residents, as distinguished from citizens, are aliens who are permitted to take up a permanent abode in the country. Being bound to the society by reason of their dwelling in it, they are subject to its laws so long as they remain there, and being protected by it, they must defend it. Although they do not enjoy all the rights of citizens, they have only certain privileges which law or custom gives them. Permanent residents are those who have been given the right of perpetual residence. They are a sort of citizen of a less privileged character and are subject to the society without enjoying all its advantages. Their children succeed to their status, for the right of perpetual residence given to them by the state passes to the children. And that's the Law of Nations by Vattel, Book 1, Chapter 19, Section 213, page 87. One does not necessarily become a non-resident by absconding or absenting himself from his place of abode. So it's what you tell them. Residence is the fact of being officially present. The statutory presence of an incumbent in a benefice.
So how do you deal with the issue of residence when they say, what's your address?
I tell them it's no zip code.
You just say the simplified address with no zip code?
Yeah.
You leave the zip code off, so
Right.
and you don't use the PA or use the full Pennsylvania.
I'll put zip code exempt, non-domestic mail.
But I mean, when they're asking you by the side of the road, what's your address
I'll just tell them it's whatever's on the driver's license,
with the zip code on
or whatever. I mean, the guy's an idiot anyways, you know. Actually, you know, in hindsight, the more I'm learning about this, I think I like Carl's approach, where you start jumping on them right off the bat, eh? Like, I see you got your emergency lights on, is there an emergency?
it? Yeah.
You get them defending themselves right off the bat.
Do the minimum contacts first.
And so then you start, like in Texas, for example, I'd be asking them, so are you one of the 5 authorized to enforce the transportation code? And then I'd be getting ready to dial 911 for official oppression. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and then they can't take your phone because you're dialing 911. That's a
Yeah.
felony.
Are you gonna interfere with a 911 call?
That's right. I'm reporting a crime. There's somebody trying to kidnap me.
That's right, that's right. It might be correctly said that there is no such thing as a citizen of the United States. A citizen of any one of the states of the Union is held to being called a citizen of the United States, although technically and abstractly there is no such thing. Every taxpayer is assessed a trust having sufficient interest in preventing abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. That's a summary, again, in that case. Taxpayers are not state citizens. Slater's protestations to the effect that he derives no benefit from the United States government have no bearing on his legal obligations to pay income taxes. Unless the defendant can establish he's not a citizen of the United States, the IRS possesses authority to attempt to determine his federal tax liability.
So go back to that previous slide once over a minute. So taxpayers, in Kerry's book, he says this is one of the words of art that they use.
Yes.
When they say taxpayer where it's combined, it's something that they created, and that means that you're part of their jurisdiction. But there's also tax space payers, and that means you're not part of their jurisdiction. So when you write back to them, you can say, well, I'm a tax space payer. Does that qualify? I mean, are you addressing me or are you addressing someone else?
Really?
Yes.
Okay, well, he's certainly good at that stuff. The right of trial by jury in civil cases guaranteed by the 7th Amendment and the right to bear arms guaranteed by the 2nd Amendment have been distinctly held not to be privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States guaranteed by the 14th Amendment against abridgments by the states. And in effect, the same decision was made in respect of the guarantee against prosecution except by indictment of a grand jury contained in the 5th Amendment, and in respect of the right to be confronted with witnesses contained in the 6th Amendment.
See, that's the issue that Kielke had with arms. If they view you as a U.S. citizen, you're fucked.
Yeah,
It says right there that
right.
Trial. Did you change the slide?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Right to bear arms guaranteed by the 2nd Amendment.
Right.
Been distinctly held not to be privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States.
Right.
So if you're a state national or a state citizen,
That's what I want to do is like what Billy did, where now he's a national. My question though is, and no, I haven't gotten the answer yet. Chris, who owns the gun store, my buddy, is going to find out. But when you fill out the application to purchase a gun in Connecticut, it's the biggest. You have to fill out 2 forms, then they have to call into the state police, who then in turn run your federal background check. One of the questions is, have you ever denounced your U.S. citizenship?
you wouldn't. You've never been a U.S. citizen.
Yeah, you've never been.
You can't denounce it.
You're not
In
lying,
order
you're
to
saying
renounce it, you gotta go to a foreign country under their regulations.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I would just click no like I usually do?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that's the next thing in line.
Yeah,
is-
what you want to do is put a note underneath it, though. It never was a U.S. citizen, so cannot renounce.
Yeah. Okay.
They're better off not giving them too much information, just answer the question.
Yeah.
You're not lying. You never were, so the answer is no.
But they can assume that you are a U.S. citizen then. That's the issue.
Well, that depends on whether there's another question that says, are you a U.S. citizen?
Yeah, that's the
In which
presumption.
case, you'd have to say, No.
It is a question. Is
Well,
there-
so
Yeah.
I would write in there non-citizen national. Because even the passport talks about that.
So, there's paperwork I have to do to become a national?
You could, well, not necessarily, I do say the words really, but you could make a little affidavit of nationality, you know what I mean?
No,
And
there's
maybe have your ancestry, you know, I don't know if you, how much research that you've done or your family's done, but if, I'll show you one that my mother actually did all the research, and then someone, when I was first learning about this, somebody showed this to me, and I thought, oh boy, this is good.
Yeah.
And, but it basically, it's a affidavit of status. It's they call it a statement of original status, that's what it's called.
Okay.
And so it basically ties you back to the founding fathers, which means you're one of the posterity found in the preamble to the Constitution. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, yep.
But there's minimum contacts that you create for yourself that where you volunteer to be a U.S. citizen. If you register to vote, we were just talking about this earlier, is you have to attest that you're a U.S. citizen to be able to vote.
Right.
So if you've registered to vote, you've got to reject that, say you made a mistake.
You gotta revoke it.
You gotta revoke your signature from your registration to vote. Because you're not a U.S. citizen. Just tell them, I made a mistake, I'm not a U.S. citizen, never was. And so I'm rejecting that. Your driver's license, you gotta be careful because most people will check the box that they're a U.S. citizen when they ask the question when you're getting your driver's license.
Yep.
And I noticed it when, the last time the one I just got recently, it said, are you a U.S. citizen, yes or no? And I put no. I mean, it was great that it was there because now you can say you're not a U.S. citizen, but if most people don't know that they're a U.S. citizen, I mean, they believe they are a U.S. citizen, most of the people I talk to, like 99.99% of the people will say they're U.S. citizens when you ask them.
Yeah.
They're proud of it, but
Yeah.
they don't realize the implications of it.
I would be inclined to write in there non-citizen nationals. When I do it.
And then the other thing is your SS5 for your social security number. Your parents probably checked you were a U.S. citizen on there. So what you need to do is you need to correct that one also. And it's a one-page thing to do. It takes just a few minutes to change it.
I'm gonna have to do that, and then I'm gonna have to do it with my son and my wife
Yeah.
because they're registered to vote. I'm
Right.
sure that they check U.S. citizen.
Are you guys going down to support Nelson?
Yeah, is it time? What
Yeah.
time is it?
Well, you thought he's gonna pack up, you guys weren't coming down.
Yeah,
He's
okay.
gonna leave.
Yeah, okay, we can take a break. Let's go take a break.
I'll go walk down the boardwalk.
Well, he suggested that we drive.
Is I'll come with you. Any more than 3? Nobody changed their mind? All right, so still just 3, okay.
Yeah, and, yeah.
I'll
that's
be right
fine.
back with that.
Anyways, so, this is the one, everybody's sovereign that's not privileged. You have to stay away from the privileges. And the Federal Reserve Notes is probably the single biggest privilege, and they don't tell you anything about it. It's, you're supposed to know. They're a bunch of thieves is what they are, and if you don't know, then that's where the IRS comes in. I've had people send me emails, you know, taxman@gmail.com, and they want my price list. So no problem, I sent it to them, but they never make an order. But you know, it was again, once they saw my price list, they couldn't do anything about it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And because I prefer gold or silver coin, I only accept the fake money, so it's not a privilege anymore. Okay, it's and when I sue somebody, I'll tell them I prefer gold or silver coin. A matter of fact, even in when I'm asking for the remedy, right? I'll go through it and I'll explain that I know you can only give me Federal Reserve notes, but I always prefer gold or silver coin, and I'll accept the fake money. I said, but I want double to cover the cost of my converted into gold and silver coin. Eh? So I'll tell them how much I want, and then I'll say, but I want an additional amount to cover my cost of converting it into gold or silver coin.
So you reminded me of something when you said that, have you heard of Howard Freeman?
No,
Either of you guys?
doesn't ring a bell.
Here's something for you two guys to think about next time you get your driver license. He was always about the compelled benefit of getting a driver license, and he always thought it was getting the privilege of the benefit of driving. But as he got a little bit older, he started to realize it was using the currency that was the privilege that was being used.
Right.
So what you do is when you go in there, you try to pay with silver dollars. They won't take it. So then they can't, you've tendered payment.
You put in what you had, okay, so just
Yeah,
make it like it is.
I like better just signing it without prejudice.
Oh yeah, well that's
That's
golden.
saying the same thing.
That's golden. Because when the cop sees it, he can't do anything.
Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you.
Well, and they know they can't.
Right?
I like that, really good. Anyways, the rights of sovereignty extend to all persons and things not privileged that are within the territory. They extend to all strangers resident therein, not only to those who are naturalized, and to those who are domiciled therein, having taken up their abode with the intention of permanent residence, but also to those whose residence is transitory. All strangers are under the protection of the sovereign while they're within his territory and owe a temporary allegiance in return for that protection. And that's U.S. Supreme Court, 1873. So, everybody's sovereign, you know. I've been in the cases and the liars will come in and they'll say, well, he says he's a sovereign citizen, and I'll say everybody's sovereign. And here's a court case that says it.
The Carlisle reference right there is similar to the Law of Nations that I've mentioned the other day. It's Book 2, Section 8, Clause 104. It said, remember it said if the sovereign invites you into their state and then enacts a snare to snare you.
Right.
That's what that's saying there, is that, you know, if you're a stranger under the protection of the sovereign, they can't snare you.
Right.
They can't take advantage of you in their country.
Right. You know, that's why have you heard of the perpetual traveler?
I have.
There's actually books on it about being the perpetual traveler. There's loads of them, and some of them are quite expensive. Written by W.G. Hill. It's a pseudonym. I don't know who writes them, but it's a pseudonym. Anyways, that's really the real free people are the ones that just travel all over the place. Of course, you got to have a lot of money to do that, but they just travel.
My
And they're
son
always
is
a
doing
traveler.
that. He's off the grid. We don't know where he is.
Who's that?
My son, he's 31, and they can't find him. But the detective said that he's alive, but he's off the grid. He won't. He has no bank account, no phone, no nothing. He's
Right.
out walking in somewhere in Seattle area.
Wow.
They found him. I got the police to find him one day. Back at what
He
about
doesn't have a
2
bank account?
Nope.
He probably just doesn't have a bank account in his name.
It's in the trust name.
It's in a trust or something like
Yeah.
that.
No, he wouldn't know that, but when my dad left him money, he's got this chunk of money in like Wells Fargo in a trust. They couldn't settle the estate till they found him. Well, they never found him. So what they did instead was just use my mom's estate trust and put it over into there so they
Right.
could settle my dad's estate. My
Right.
sister's an attorney out in Las Vegas, and
Right.
she talked with his partner. My dad was a real estate tax attorney, and they figured out to
Right.
get this estate settled. But
Trusts can do all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they're private.
Yep. Strangers have a social security number. Deuteronomy 23:19, thou shalt not lend upon usury to thy brother, usury of money, usury of victuals, usury of anything that is lent upon usury. Unto a stranger thou mayest lend upon usury. So that's why they won't loan you money, give you a credit card, do anything like that unless you give them a social security number. Gotta be a stranger. Think about it.
That comes from the Jewish side of things as well, because
Yeah.
they're only allowed to lend at interest or with usury to Gentiles.
Right.
They can't lend to the
Oh, so the social security number says you have to be a resident to get a social security number. If you're a resident, you're just there temporarily until you go back to your permanent domicile.
You're corporate, you're a stranger, basically.
Oh my God. Never saw that one before.
Yep. The bankster thieves will not loan their so-called money unless you can prove you're a resident.
Yep, there you go.
So a U.S. citizen does not have access to the per state amendments against the powers of the federal government. These are all, we went through these court cases to talk about that. U.S. citizen does not have a right to trial by jury. U.S. citizen does not have the right to keep and bear arms. U.S. citizen does not have the right to face their accuser. U.S. citizen does not have right to give evidence against state citizens. A U.S. citizen has no right to common law indictment, and they have mandatory military service, they have mandatory taxes, and they may vote, but it doesn't mean anything. No political power.
That's
That's
what
why
we
they
all are.
justify rigging the elections. Everybody that
US
votes swears under penalty of perjury they're a U.S. citizen. So they just go ahead and rig the elections. I mean, think about it. You can be a national without being a citizen. Citizenship is part of a political community. There's the passport.
Okay,
That's a part out of the passport.
right,
I'm not sure if I'm gonna, there, I do make it bigger.
good job.
So, and that's where the non-citizen nationals is in that box. That box isn't normally there, I put it there. And it is, however, true that in all common law countries, and has always and consistently been held, that the wife and minor children take the nationality of the husband and father. That's common law doctrine. So they go and make people get a green card, but they don't have to. By getting a green card, they say, my wife was from Canada. And she is in Canada right now, in fact. But, because she got tired of, well, it's a long story. But,
It always is, Glenn.
so anyways, she lived here for decades and never got a green card. And the cops would stop her, and and we had a minivan, and the windshield was cracked, and the cops stopped her, and she I had paperwork in the glove box that I told them to give her. She had a Canadian driver's license, and the cop would say, "Who owns this van?" And she says, "My husband does." And the cop would say, "So why doesn't he get you a green card?" And she'd say, "Well, he feels like he's getting his rights violated by doing that." And the cop would say, "Well, he's probably right." And the cop would say, "Need to fix your windshield, and have a nice day."
That's it?
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times that kind of stuff happened with my wife, because I'm American, and so she never had a problem. Never had a
He
problem.
knew the
She had.
law. or-
She came across the border, and at the border they gave her this visa, this piece of paper. It was a visa to come across, and it said that she had to turn it in or check in with the immigration service, right? So she calls up the immigration service, and the immigration service throw that thing in the garbage. You don't need to worry about that thing. Your husband's American. You're American. Really? I'm serious. Yeah. Same thing in Canada. My mother was American, and they even put her on the voter rolls, and she never took out Canadian citizenship. Yeah. Yeah. That's common law. In doing this, I shall have occasion, incidentally, to evince how true it is that states and governments were made for man, and at the same time how true it is that his creatures and servants at first deceived, next vilified, and at last oppressed their master and maker. Let a state be considered to us as subordinate to the people, and let everything else be subordinate to the state. That's Chisholm versus Georgia. That's like 1796 or something like that. Every citizen and freeman is endowed with certain rights and privileges to enjoy which no written law or statutes required. These are fundamental or natural rights recognized among all free people. Statutes don't apply to people. They apply to government employees.
Exactly. But they're imposing them on people.
Oh, they do. As a general rule, men have the natural right to do anything which their inclinations would suggest, if it be not evil in itself and in no way impairs the rights of others. Blackstone's commentaries on the laws of England. Blackstone If you read the Declaration of Independence, it says in the very beginning, it says, because the king has violated the law of nature and nature's God, we're telling them to take a hike. And then it's basically a list of reasons. And so the law of nature is taken from Blackstone's commentaries on the laws of England. Blackstone wrote this in the mid-1700s. Anyways, this law of nature being coequal with mankind and dictated by God himself is of course superior in obligation to any other. It is binding over all the globe and all countries and at all times. No human laws are of any validity if contrary to this, and such of them as are valid derive all their force, all their authority immediately or immediately from this original. All acts of the legislature apparently contrary to natural rights and justice are in our law and must be in the nature of things considered as void. The laws of nature are the laws of God, whose authority can be superseded by no power on earth. A legislature must not obstruct our obedience to him, from whose punishments they cannot protect us. All human constitutions which contradict his, God's laws, we are in conscience bound to disobey. The individual, unlike the corporation, cannot be taxed for the mere privilege of existing. The corporation is an artificial entity which owes its existence and charter powers to the states, but the individual rights to live and own property are natural rights, for the enjoyment of which an excise cannot be imposed. And this is Paul, but for some reason it's going off the end of the page here. So let me make it smaller. There.
So if it goes against the laws of God, you know, if your body is your temple, you don't want to contaminate your temple with a vaccination.
Some vaccine, that's right. But the people are so
There you go, Carl. Put that in
so
your
dumbed
letter,
down
too.
today by the public education system. And they bound him with thongs. Paul said unto the centurion that stood by, is it lawful for you to scourge a man that is a Roman and uncondemned? When the centurion heard that, he went and told the chief captain, saying, take heed what thou doest, for this man is a Roman. Then the chief captain came and said unto him, tell me, art thou a Roman? And he said, yes. And the chief captain answered, with a great sum obtained I this freedom. And Paul said, I was freeborn. Then straightway they departed from him, which should have examined him, and the chief captain was also afraid, for he knew that he was a Roman, because he had bound him. Again, do you know who you are? This is as old as time itself.
So the chief captain was afraid because he was afraid that Paul would do something to go after him then?
Well, Paul was the sovereign.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
I think it got even deeper. I think he was afraid of what would happen in the spirit, like with Christ.
No.
No?
No, he was afraid what Rome would do to him.
What
Because
Rome would
what
do
he'd
to him.
done.
Oh, okay.
Pastor Deb taught on this one time. I remember her teaching this whole thing a couple years back.
Well, I mean, that's in the Bible, obviously, but he was
Right.
afraid of what Rome was going to do. Some military generals afraid of what God's going to do to him. Not too many of them are, I'll tell you. He's basically a general.
Afraid of Paul then.
Afraid of Paul, or if
Or the
somebody in Rome found out what was going on. In order for a member of the sovereignty to become subject to regulation in any way, they must agree to it. As with any contract, it must be knowing, willing, and intentional. The state citizen is immune from any and all government attacks and procedure absent contract. Or as the Supreme Court has stated clearly, every man is independent of all laws except those prescribed by nature. He's not bound by the institutions formed by his fellow men without his consent. The rights of individuals are restricted only to the extent that they have voluntarily surrendered by citizenship to the agencies of government. And this is a letter from Arizona Senator Wayne Stupp. Here, I'll pass it around. You
I
can
thought
take
he
a look.
was the Secretary of State at the time, but you're right, he was a state senator then.
Yeah. I'll zoom in close. It's directed to every head of every law enforcement agency in Arizona. And it was in December 10th, 1985. And this is actually a certified copy
We both see.
and apostilled. You done with it?
Yeah, I'm just gonna watch it up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, so it has come to my attention that numerous individuals in our states have rescinded all of their contracts with the United States federal government, the state of Arizona, and each of its political subdivisions, establishing themselves as freemen under the organic national constitution of the Republic of the United States of America. Consequently, they may be driving without auto registration, driver's license, or any other evidence of contract. Because many law enforcement personnel may be unaware of the contractual nature of auto registration and driver's license, it is conceivable that this situation may lead to confrontation between these individuals and law enforcement personnel. I urge you to inform yourself and your personnel about this matter as soon as possible. If you would like to be briefed by someone knowledgeable on this subject, please contact me. In the meantime, inasmuch as this procedure is entirely appropriate when properly carried out, I would like to be personally notified of every such instance of confrontation. Anyways, that's the sum of the letter.
Now that's
And-
you writing this?
No, that's
That's the
Arizona
state
senator writing it, sending it to the head of every law enforcement officer in Arizona. At head
When
of
was
every
this
law,
written?
huh?
When was this written?
1985.
This has been going on for quite a while. I'm just learning about this about maybe 3, 4 years ago with Jody.
It's been
right?
going on for,
Right,
since the beginning of the Constitution.
right. It's wrong that they're doing this, but the fact that he wrote this and it's not been addressed, has it?
Well, it has in Arizona, and he's the only Arizona senator, he's the only, this is the only, actually the only letter from any government agency anywhere in the country that I've seen. I
That's
would
kind
like
of
to
what I'm
see other
thinking along
ones.
those lines. Is there anything else? No, this is it.
Yeah,
I
And,
drive,
and what's come from this?
I live in
Anything?
Arizona 6 months out of the year, and I drive around with 2 cars with a plate that says exempt on it. And it's a homemade plate. And it gives them warning that I'm not driving in commerce, not for hire, do not tow,
Right.
private household good, private property. And in their constitution, it says household goods are not taxable in any, or in this state, and the
Right.
person claiming the exemption does not have to take any affirmative action to claim it.
right, yeah, the Arizona Constitution is pretty slick that way.
Right.
Say that last line again. They don't have to do what?
They don't have to take any affirmative action to claim such exemption.
Okay, so you're just automatically
Exempt.
known as exempt, right? Which we all should be or are.
Right.
We're just being bamboozled to believe otherwise. We're
Well, if you classify your car as a household good as opposed to a motor vehicle,
Right.
motor vehicle is regulated by them, a household good is not, it's
Yeah.
exempt.
We
so
have
say
other,
household good, not personal conveyance, or is that the same thing?
I've got
Household
other,
good is not the same thing
a
as a personal
private,
conveyance.
well, a private conveyance is fine, but,
It
but,
is actually.
but it's,
It's
Private conveyance.
the consumer goods is found in the Uniform Commercial Code. And so, everything they do is commerce, okay? And so it's easier to use their words in a situation like that, but it's a private conveyance. And so, in a situation like that, I tell them, well, I consider it a private conveyance, but you might want to consider it a consumer good, something like
So
that.
when you're doing your accounting with your accountant, how does, it gets complicated, how do you say this to them? I have a business, so I do use it for personal and business.
Well, an accountant is for
The
business. IRS, right?
Right.
So, first of all, my consumer goods is no business of the IRS.
But even if you have just personal taxes, people do, right? When you don't, estates
I
and
haven't
things.
done it for a long time.
Yeah, I know people have not.
IRS is again for U.S. citizens. If you read their code,
Uh-huh.
it's for U.S. citizens, okay? When you fill out a job application and produce a social security number, that they want to know if you're a U.S. citizen or not. I guarantee you there's a little box to check there, U.S. citizen.
So how would you approach it otherwise? Just say,
Well, what I do, quite frankly, is I manage a company called American Engineering Services. And when I get a contract, and I help design the hydraulic system on the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. By
Okay.
doing that, and American Engineering Services got paid. And then American Engineering Services has a contract with me to pay me gold or silver coin. And so,
lawful money.
that's right.
When you get a letter from the IRS, how do they address you? Dear taxpayer.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
right.
All one word. I just talked to Glenn about this a minute ago.
Okay,
In Carrie Zolman's book, there's a difference between taxpayer, all one word,
right,
and taxpayer, tax space payer.
right,
Taxpayer is something they invented to create joinder with you. If you say I'm a tax space payer, is that the same thing, or just ask them a question about it? And they've responded back to them saying, no, they're different things. They don't have joinder over you if you're a tax space payer. They create this word of art called taxpayer, all one word, and that's something that they created so
which
that
makes you probably a corporation in that word, right?
it binds you to them.
All word salad, and you just,
Well, yeah.
There is a
In the
document.
law, words are everything.
Yeah. There is a document that I came across recently. It's in a photograph form, so I'll have to find it again. But there is a revocation of declaration. Because what you did when you filed your first 1040, you declared that you were a US citizen.
A revocation of election.
Election, yeah.
The one that I saw was a revocation of election.
Yeah, that's what
Okay,
I did.
I'll check on the.
But
Yeah,
I've
I'll
done
check
that
on
too.
that.
I've done
Yeah.
we revoked my election.
Yeah, it basically says that you're no longer, it's voluntary, and you're now rescinding your voluntary support of the IRS, etc.
so now you have to learn, and Jody was learning this, how to do rescissions. That we have to rescind all this stuff, correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, as far as that, because you've sent in documentation that you're admitting that you are a taxpayer and a US citizen, and you're required to file, and you're required to pay if there is anything to pay, blah, blah. So what you're doing is, you're now realizing, and it's part of the document, that says you realize your true status and you are now rescinding your original declaration of being a US citizen and a taxpayer,
And who do we send that to?
IRS.
So the other thing is when you get a notification from the IRS in the mail, they address it to taxpayer, but you look at that letter, the text of the letter, and count how many times they say the word you. But they never define what you is. You is plural. It could mean you, the two-dimensional you, the birth certificate. It could mean you, the three-dimensional
that.
you, the living
I
person.
sent it to you about the definition of you on a paper.
Is
Yeah, I
it-
think you did, yeah.
It could be anything else because they don't define what you is. So you've got to go back to them and say, who is you that you're talking? Who are you talking to?
Who is this
You're
you?
talking to you. I don't know. You know, when somebody gets in front of an audience and they address the audience as you, it could be anyone in the audience. Everybody thinks they're talking to them.
Right.
But if you don't specify, they're talking to the entire audience. Or they're talking to one person. You don't know until you ask and clarify.
The true English is ye.
Ye.
Ye. That's the singular.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, isn't that interesting? I didn't know that.
Or
So
me.
you is multiple.
Or me.
Or me, but the old English.
That's good to know. Next time I go into court, I'll say, please refer to me as ye.
Okay, state citizenship is a vested substantial property right, and the state has no power to divest or impair these rights.
You just missed it, you're a ye, not a you.
So, how can you lose sovereignty? Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Anytime you get anything from the government, it's an implied contract and brings you into their jurisdiction. Anytime you register for anything or make application for anything from the government, you're giving them a power of attorney to make legal determinations for you and represent you. You're making them competent in your affairs. You're telling them that you are a person. You're converting yourself into a slave. All statutes are written very carefully, and most do not apply to the people. Very few actually apply to we the people. 99% of the time, the government is technically correct. It's not up to the government to tell you you're a member of the sovereignty. It's not up to them to tell you who you are. The government lawyers make up a statute that properly applies to those entities that they have jurisdiction over. They use wordsmithing, and it's very deceptive. Again, the government is owned and operated by the Roman cult, and they're thieves. And they steal and lie and cheat and do all of that stuff. And so you have to understand, because we the people were asleep at the wheel and allowed it to go bankrupt, really is what it comes down to. We allowed all of this stuff to happen. The Federal Reserve, you know, it's interesting to note that the Federal Reserve was created on Christmas Eve in the middle of the night on December 23rd in 2013, right? Or no, 1913.
Actually, it was 1912, but it was ratified, supposedly, it being ratified in 1913.
So it's Christmas of 1912.
Yeah, I believe that's when it was.
Anyways, it was 9 months short of 20 years. That's how long it took them to bankrupt the country. 9 months short of 20 years.
Sorry.
Because it went bankrupt on March 6th of 1933. So
Look at that
it's
year,
9 months.
33, Mason number,
Sorry?
Mason number 33.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Highest degree.
The burden is on us to assert ourselves. If a member of the sovereignty gets unknowingly involved in something that operates as a contract by which he might lose his sovereignty, you make a mistake of law and fact. You have to understand the law, and so, but at the bottom line is you make a mistake of law and fact.
Give an example of that.
And here's that Carlisle case again, which we already read. The rights of sovereignty extend to all persons and things not privileged. So you gotta stay out of those contracts. It's either one or the other. You're either the king or you're a slave.
What are some of those
Nothing in
contracts where
between.
you make the mistake of law and fact?
What are the consequences?
Well, how about by using Federal Reserve notes,
Yeah,
right?
but there are others that we don't recognize, right?
Right, rule registering your vehicle, driver's license, those are probably the three biggest ones, but the Federal Reserve notes is probably the single biggest one, and they don't tell you a word about it. There's nothing in writing. You know what I mean?
So it's all deceived consent, so how does that fall? We're consenting, but we're deceived to consent.
Yeah, that's right. So, but again, if you're deceived, then the burden's on you to bring up the issue. You didn't tell me.
So one way is to use a qualified signature, so you sign your name and you do ARR for all rights reserved, without prejudice, without recourse.
Yeah, but when you do that, it's when they're forcing you to sign something,
Right.
okay? You never ever do that, and that's another presentation I was hoping to go through. You never ever do that when you're making an affidavit or something, because now you want that affidavit to have power, so you don't do any of that stuff on there. You want it to have power. And you're not putting anything in there that you don't want to put in there. So you cannot do that when you make an affidavit. You'd basically nullify the signature when you do that. I mean, these judges see that. I see that all the time. People will put without prejudice on an affidavit, and that's like sending the judge a bunch of confetti. You know, it doesn't mean anything. And you cannot do that on an affidavit. Or if you're filing a court document, you don't want to put any of that stuff on there. You want to have full responsibility for it. And I see people do that all the time. I can't tell you how many. And there's people in the patriot community that tell people to do that. And that's, you never ever do that. There's, I don't know how many people, if you guys have heard of Kevin Hines. He's a friend of mine in Texas. Again, they call him the banker, because he used to be a banker. And he said that back in the 90s, a federal judge, he was down in a federal court in Dallas, and the federal judge told him, you put without prejudice on there, that just nullified your signature. There's no signature there. I went and opened a bank account. I had a bank account with Bank of Oklahoma, and I'd made up this without prejudice, UCC 1-209 at the time. It was 209. And so I'd made up this little stamp, and I was putting it below my signature on checks. And the Bank of Oklahoma sent me a letter, and they said, we cannot accept the liability for you putting that UCC statement on your checks, and they closed my account.
Ooh.
Well, think about it. I was nullifying my signature. There wasn't a signature on there. So I'm sending out a check and people are cashing it, and so then the bank is responsible.
Yeah, because you're signing as the authorized representative.
Well, and it's no signature.
Right.
There's no signature because I put without prejudice. So now the bank has to pay it. You see what I'm saying? I'm basically telling the bank to pay it.
That's a good thing.
Well, you know, I don't blame them for doing that. It never dawned on me. You know, I was kind of upset at the time, and but it never dawned on me until I started thinking about it and seeing people doing that. And people do that all the time. I can't tell you how many people do that
Did
on
the bank shut
affidavits.
down your account, but did they pay it? Or did they pay it out of your
Oh,
account?
it came out of my account.
So they technically weren't doing what they were supposed to do.
That's true. I could have sued them over that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, there's a woman in the state of Washington that did that for her property tax.
Uh-huh.
She paid her property tax, and under the signature line, she put under duress. And when it came back, the bank paid it, so she went to the bank, and she pointed out that it was under duress and made them go to the Federal Reserve Insurance and pay her account back.
Oh, right on.
So they restored her account. They didn't take the money out of her account. They took it out of the FDIC insurance.
Right.
So
Now,
that's,
this is interesting, because I don't know how far this is going yet, but I signed VC on a court document where the lawyer for the other side that had tried to scam us, he actually did steal $13,000 from us, but I put VC. I looked up that morning when the realtor said we're gonna let this go through, the $13,000 that he was stealing. That's the only way I was gonna sell my property without them stealing it. So I put a VC, and I took my red thumbprint and put it over it, because I knew not anything else to do. So I had to, I Googled it, I looked it up, and that's the document. So would you be able to tell me where that landed me by doing that?
what does VC mean?
It's a Latin term for under duress. You sign it in your beginning of your name, you put the initials, and I put my thumbprint to show that I, you know.
What I would do is you'd have to make an affidavit and explain that VC and copy that document and file it into the case.
Okay.
And you'd probably have nullified that signature,
Oh,
but
if you
having,
go back to the bank and request the insurance. Say, I signed it under duress.
it was on a court document.
Oh, in a court document.
It was for a settlement of my property. They were trying to steal the property, so I had to sell it to get out from under them trying to steal it, because I didn't know how to save it.
Oh,
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
They were gonna
Same
try to
thing
steal it,
happened
and
to
I
me
wanted
too.
to get at least, you know, do you have anything to say on that? Like, because you were part of this, do you have anything to add to that? You heard me say about the VC and the affidavit and put that into the court document? What do you think, Glenn?
I don't know, other than it would nullify the court document, if that's the case, but again, you'd have to file an affidavit, and then it would nullify the court document, and then they'd be looking you up again.
Yeah, and when you say they'd be looking me up again, because he never filed, remember I told you that he didn't file? And the court had to come back and say, well, you never dismissed this case, or, you know, and he said he was going to. That's gonna be our bar complaint, that he just took the money and never bothered
Dismissing the case.
dismissing the case. He just did it the other day, like 2 days ago.
Uh-huh.
And this was back, what, I don't even know, July? So that took them to,
So then I would, well, I would file it into the case anyways, but then I would also, he probably saw that, and that's probably why he took his time dismissing it. But you could file, is the judge, I'd file a judicial complaint against the judge. Sure, it's up to you. That would be evidence, for sure.
for the 1983 lawsuit later? What would the
Well,
evidence help us
For the
with?
judicial complaint, misconduct, judge is supposed to know.
Because he said we're not, you know, you have to agree that we're not scamming you, duress, all the things, coercion, the list went on. You know, and I put VC and I signed it, and they settled the case, or settled everything and paid me my money, let it go through the lien that had already been paid, blah, blah,
So
blah.
his lawyer had prepared that.
The environmental concrete lawyer, yeah, the people that were suing us for,
Right,
even though we'd already paid it, they wanted us to pay it again to them, because we paid
Right.
it to the contractor.
right. Yeah, so then they would,
And that was under statute and code.
it would basically reopen the suit, and then they'd have additional damages that they'd probably start suing you, unless you're prepared to
Right.
defend it somehow. You see what I'm saying?
That's what I'm afraid of, exactly. That's exactly where I thought they'd take it.
Yeah.
You agreed to, that you
Well,
weren't
no,
being coerced.
There was no agreement there. There's a VC there,
Yeah.
and that's, and then show that that's whatever VC means, which means that it was under duress. And so there's no agreement. And
But
and
they took the
then,
money.
once you,
They took the money already off the top
Right.
of the sale.
right, so, but you did sell a house and you got the other money, right?
Right.
So you could,
Like, they owe me back the 13,000, period.
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean? They stole that 13,000. He took 9,000 for himself, and they took the bill that we already paid and took the money again.
They do
And the
double
contractor
billing.
just
That's
walked
what happened
away.
to me. They did double billing.
It basically is double billing,
right,
They do
but
it all the
it
time.
went to two different people.
The problem is you can only seek a review because it's all under contract. Even though you wrote VC on it, you've completed the contract by performing. You've received your part of the money and accepted it.
Right, that's, okay.
So they will just say, well, you got the money. That's how they do everything with the mortgage in the first place.
Right.
You got the money.
It was
You
all
performed
cash
on the
deal, there was no
contract.
mortgage involved.
Well, yeah, I mean, that,
fake money.
that's two, yeah,
Fake
it's two
money.
separate things, but the way they do it is simply because they double bill and they get you in the contract itself. The fact that you performed this performance. Because contracts, they have all sorts of different contracts. But if there's performance on it, then the contract is complete. And the only way
And
you
the performance
can go...
is them having, well, it's the title company that settled
Right.
the sale, not the lawyer. He just stole the money off the top.
Right.
So that's where I don't know how this all works. And all, because I was an LLC, they wanted me to, and people say, you're not an LLC, Meredith. Like, you know, in other words, is Glenn an LLC? No, he's a living being. You know, if I'm gonna sit there and say I'm an LLC, then I'm just shooting myself in the foot.
operate as an LLC.
No, I'll never do it again.
I do for my compensation.
Right.
I'm not an LLC. The LLC, I'm a manager, I'm an employee of the LLC,
Right.
that is it. So,
It was a small claims amount though. It should have been in a small claims court where we could have defended ourselves without an attorney.
right,
They took it to the wrong court, a court that they knew that I had to hire an attorney. They wouldn't let me speak. They kept striking all my documents. We never hired an attorney. We went in there and fought it anyway. It was crazy stuff, Florida.
Florida small claims court is more than 13,000?
No, it's, what is it now? I think it's up to, oh gosh, it used to be like 3,000, but it's up even more than that, maybe closer to 10,000.
25,000?
I don't think it's that
I
high.
think in Texas, the small claims courts are up to 25,000.
Okay, well, the bill was only 2,700, and she was willing to settle it for 2,000 when we finally got to that point. And he told her, her own lawyer, said, shut up, let me handle this, of course, because he wanted his cut. So he never gave us a bill, he just skimmed 9,000 off the top.
Right.
That was his bill. If you call it a bill, that was his theft, you know? I guess he just kind of figured he'll push it up a little higher than,
Yeah, but so what'll happen then, in that case?
he took the money, he's got it in his pocket.
He took it, he's got it,
Yeah,
and you'd have to sue her, and she'd have to sue him.
Well, that depends whether he's put it down as legal fees. If he's put it down as legal fees, then the only thing you can do is go and seek another lawyer to take that lawyer to the judges and seek. What the hell do you
Yeah, and
call it?
that'd be, you're not gonna, that's
You're not going to
almost
win that
impossible.
one. You're not going to win that one, and that's the whole
And
point.
so, but that's
so do
where
you see why we just tried to back up out of this and let him steal the 13,000?
file a bar grievance against them.
We have 4 out so far. You helped us with the first one. Clyde wrote the second one.
And,
We
and,
put them to
and
both the
file-
firm and the
and
individual
now-
attorney.
now, he embezzled funds from you. Matter of fact, I'd file a criminal complaint, but again, because he coerced you into signing this document, and And the evidence is the BC that's there.
It's really the truth, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you get a document that says you're not gonna get your house sold unless you
Anyways,
agree to all this.
right now I'm recording this. We can talk about it after if you
Sure.
like. But so the courts have ruled that the government is not the protector of the Constitution. And so then if the government's not the protector of the Constitution, then who is? It's you. It's the people who are supposed to be protecting the Constitution. And how do we do it? We do it by challenging what the government does through the courts and administratively. The burden's on we the people to know and understand the law and to assert our rights. Especially when there's a bunch of pirates that have seized control of the government. All contracts must be knowing, willing, and intentional. None of the contracts entered into with the government by which you might lose your sovereignty are willing, intentional, or knowing. The sovereignty of the people is unalienable and imprescriptible. In order to regain your sovereignty, you must assert it. And you must, when you assert it, and I have a procedure that I developed, you build a case with evidence that you can use in court at a future date should you need to. And I always use registered mail. The government attorneys may turn it over to a bureaucrat who may respond off point. And if the government were to admit that you were right, they would be admitting to treason, extortion, genocide, felonies, multiple felonies. The government attorneys usually don't respond at all. They're smart if they don't respond. In order to be truly free, you must be self-reliant. You must not only talk the talk, you must walk the walk. You got to be knowledgeable about the law and how it works. You got to be prepared to take the initiative and to court if necessary. Make it known in no uncertain terms that you are all of the above. It's all about slavery. It's not about race. A U.S. citizen or citizen of Canada or citizen of Australia is a slave. Either you're the king or you're a slave, and there's nothing in between. If you participate in their color of law statutes, then you've agreed to be their slave. It's only involuntary servitude that's not lawful. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. Nobody said it'd be easy, but it is possible. If tyranny and oppression come to this land, it will be in the guise of fighting a foreign enemy. That's prophetic, I'll tell you. What's the alternative? Live free or die. And that's the end. So, anyways, that's who are we the people.
Can you send me a copy of that, please?
Sure, I'll send you a PDF.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that a sneeze?
Yeah,
Bless you.
thank you.
You blow your brains out sneezing like that.
That's right. My sneezes come in fives. I can't sneeze just once.
Mine come in twos.
Yours come in twos.
That document that I was referring to when you're talking about you is called Who is You?
Gotcha.
So if you were looking for it somewhere, Glenn, that's
There
what
he
it's
is.
titled.
Hello. How's everybody?
Okay, so what's your email address?
Let's see, so is this still
I
there?
already know. Who wanted it? Is it you?
Right here.
Well, I know what your email address is.
So what's everyone's name? I know Nelson,
Yeah.
Ed,
Carl.
Kyle,
Carl.
Everyone says Kyle. I don't know.
Carl. It's the accent.
I know.
I'm Tara.
Tara,
Nice to meet you. Gabby.
Gabby.
You gotta say Carl.
Yeah, you gotta pronounce the R, roll the R.
Come on, Claus. Speak
Sleeping
about
Clyde, retired. Meredith. We met Glenn through Jody. How do you guys know Glenn? How do you know Glenn?
Oh, like coming here.
They've been coming here for a long time.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha. So everybody's from New Jersey now, or? So nice-
Carl is a retired police officer, and he's actually gonna give a presentation. I was figuring on probably letting him do it next.
Yeah, you can make time for it, for sure. It usually goes on and on a little bit sometimes with everybody rushing in with the questions and stuff.
Sure.
So,
Maybe we'll let you get all the way through
yeah.
and hold your questions till the end.
I don't mind so much because sometimes the prescient at the time that I'm talking about it, so.
Sure.
So do you guys all live in Ocean City or
No, we're near Princeton.
you're Princeton? Okay.
Mhm.
How about you, Carl?
Well, Tara's my wife, so
Oh, Princeton, okay.
Princeton.
All right. And how about you, Ed?
We're not state
Pennsylvania,
citizens,
Square.
we're nationals,
Okay.
we're sovereigns.
We're all free.
I live somewhere in the land of New Jersey.
Well, Clyde's from Texas, actually.
Actually, if you deal with it like Carl
He's here
does,
now.
it never becomes an issue of whether you're state or federal or whatever. I mean, and he just deals with it and, you know.
It's a question of taking oneself out of the system. That's where I'm at.
Anyways,
Yeah, that would be good.
do we want to take a break first or should we just let Carl start?
Up to Carl.
Well, I should tell you, I think, is he the last presentation?
It will be if it's a
Probably.
Then I would take a break. Because then after that'll be dinner and then,
Okay. It's 20 minutes to 4, so yeah, it'll probably. Okay, well, that's fine. Go ahead.
It's Corey
Let's take a 5-minute break.
doing his stuff, or is he?
Take a
I'm
5-minute
so
break.
Is he
comfortable.
gonna?
Yeah.
You just got
He
this
left the room, so I don't know.
But it's good to get up and move the blood, right? Get the blood out the bones.
Okay.
Oh.
no, he's not giving any more